At the bones of the Bak Pha district, under the gloomy sky with swirling black clouds, two men who did not look very good were diligently digging a grave to steal the valuables that were buried with the deceased. Tran Bai seemed timid, looking at the strange and evil white coffin that buried the pregnant woman, and was so scared that he almost shit his pants. He asked his senior, Suyen Tu, if there was a pregnant woman buried underneath. A pregnant woman but using a white coffin? How the hell is that possible? Did I dig the wrong grave? The man named Suyen Tu saw that his incompetent younger brother didn't know anything, so he put on a straight face and preached. He said that coffins are divided into 5 types: pink, white, black, yellow, and gold. Pink coffins are for the elderly who die of old age, which is called a happy funeral. Black coffins are for those who die suddenly in battle. Yellow coffins are for the poor. Gold coffins are for those of high status. White coffins are used for the bodies of men and women who die before they have a chance to get married. After listening to his senior's philosophy of life for a while, Tran Bai finally realized that he had dug the right grave. With his usual curiosity and nosiness, he wondered if the woman buried inside had really been pregnant and had died from a fall. So she hadn't gotten married yet? So she was pregnant before she had a husband? Didn't that mean she was thrown into the river in a pig cage? Who picked up her body? Suyen Tu almost died of anger after hearing his younger brother ask such stupid questions. His face clearly said, "Guess what?" He said that he didn't know the details and that he wasn't her father. He urged Tran Bai to quickly go down with him to pry open the coffin lid, take the most valuable things, and leave. Suddenly, it started to rain. The two thieves tried their best to push open the coffin lid. The moment the lid popped open, a bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the image of a woman in a red dress lying inside. Thunder roared. A slender hand from the woman's body gently grasped Suyen Tu's hand. The two men froze for 5 seconds. At the same time, there was a loud clap of thunder. In front of the dilapidated temple, a young man named Tan appeared, his mouth wide open. He laughed smugly. "The rolling thunder can't kill me, Tan. My character's halo is too strong. I'm a lucky guy. Lightning can't kill me. I'm just a lucky guy with the halo of a main character." Still busy patting himself on the back after his accidental time travel, Tan was suddenly pulled back to reality by the pouring rain. He saw the dilapidated temple in front of him again. He thought he was still on the mountain, enjoying the scenery. But now, why am I standing in this godforsaken place? He hurriedly ran into the temple to shelter from the rain. He couldn't help but sigh and mutter to himself, complaining that he had been wandering around the mountains for days without seeing a single person. He blamed his bad luck, wondering why his youthful trip had suddenly turned into an unknown survival mission. He asked himself an unanswerable question. Wasn't the scenery here supposed to be beautiful? Stepping into the temple, he gasped and then was stunned, gaping at the beautiful scenery in front of him. Especially striking was the headless statue that was clearly visible when the lightning flashed. Looking at the travel guide, Tan opened his eyes wide to see what this godforsaken place was. Was there a place like this on the map? He almost had a heart attack when two figures suddenly appeared behind him. They spoke in a familiar voice, saying, "Little brother," with a very friendly expression. He was so scared that his soul almost left his body. These two people had walked up without making a sound, making him jump and throw the book he was holding in his hand. He was very strong-willed to still be conscious, or he would have died without even knowing it. The man called his son to his side. "Don't run around," he said. "Don't be afraid, little brother." While starting a fire, he introduced himself as a woodcutter named Wang Tigan, and his son was named Xiao Bao. The father and son were in the forest chopping wood. The light shone on the headless statue. At the same time, the woodcutter raised his axe. He kept urging Tan to come closer and sit by the fire to warm himself. Tan thought back to the words "Don't be afraid, little brother," and broke out in a cold sweat. Looking at the gleaming axe, he wondered if it was really for chopping wood or for chopping people's heads off. Tan was so scared that he stuttered and refused. The father and son were dressed like that, and it was really touching to look at them. But it was strange that there were still people who needed to chop wood for a living this year. "Oh dear, this young man is too timid. If I were him, I would have run away. How could he stand there and observe the surroundings? He couldn't help but sigh at the father and son. He suddenly felt that this small temple was dangerous from all sides. He wondered if he should leave this desolate place and find another shelter. Then he sat down in a corner and let it go. He also flatly refused to accept the strange woodcutter's cake. He told himself to be vigilant. He felt that the current temple was not safe at all. He glanced at the statue again. Tan felt as if he was being watched by the headless statue. It clearly had no head, but he always felt like there was a gaze staring at him. Unconsciously, the longer he looked, the more sleepy he felt. He told himself not to fall asleep, but sleepiness had already taken hold of his eyes. How could he avoid it? Before his eyelids closed, he saw Xiao Bao running outside. In his daze, Tan saw the child being torn apart by some ghostly force. Xiao Bao cried out in pain. His mouth kept calling out, "Brother, I'm in pain. I'm going to be eaten." He urged his brother to run away quickly. He woke up with a start, gulped, and gasped for breath. He couldn't help but feel scared. He suddenly felt lucky that it was just a dream. But if the game were that easy, what would there be for you to read? Haha. Before he could catch his breath, he saw the woodcutter frantically searching for his son. His face was covered in tears and snot. He grabbed Tan, making him feel like his little heart was about to fall out. He looked very worried. Tegan cried and asked Tan if he had seen his son, but Tan was so confused that he didn't know what to say. He told the man to calm down and then asked him if he hadn't seen Xiao Bao. Just now, when he was in a daze, he had seen Xiao Bao go out the door. The woodcutter fell to his knees. He recounted the dream after his recent unconscious nap, saying that Xiao Bao wanted to go to the toilet. He unconsciously fell asleep again. In his dream, he saw Xiao Bao being eaten and urged him to run away. The woodcutter cried so much that the temple was about to flood. He was shocked to learn that they had both had the same dream. Tan stared at the monstrous statue while the woodcutter kept fussing behind him. He kept asking what if Xiao Bao had been eaten. He said that if he had known, he would have brought Xiao Bao home even if it was raining heavily. But life is not about ifs or maybes. If you knew everything in advance, you would be rich, my friend. Tan confirmed that he had also had the same dream. The clay statue ate people, just like the woodcutter's dream. The child told him to run away quickly. The woodcutter became even more flustered and asked the question that everyone knew. Could it be that there really was a demon harming the poor child? The woodcutter cried and called out to his son in despair. No matter what it was, the first to strike is the strongest. As a great virgin who follows science, he could not believe in such a baseless story about a monster eating people. So he took the knife and ran towards the statue with great momentum. Let's see the power of my blade. He slashed and hacked as if he were playing a fruit ninja game. I don't care what kind of monster you are. He kept chopping, thinking he would figure it out later. As he was getting into the swing of things, a strange object flew out from the slash. The woodcutter crawled over and hugged the human face to his chest, crying like a pig being slaughtered. He kept calling his son's name. The face was horribly mangled, covered in blood and with its teeth bared. At this moment, the young man Tan slowly turned around to look. Oh my god, what the hell? Wasn't that face the woodcutter's? A cold wind suddenly blew through his weak heart. What should he do? At this moment, the best strategy was to run away. Those who know the current affairs are the real heroes. Tan tiptoed away, so cautiously that he didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. He took one step at a time, leaving this ghostly place. Suddenly, he felt a hand about to grab him. He waved his knife wildly. Get away from me. He prayed to the Buddhas of the 10 directions to protect him. He looked left and right but saw no one except the woodcutter. He saw that the man was still hugging the face and crying. At that moment of carelessness, the hand reached out again, covering his mouth and pulling him into the darkness. Tan was like, what the hell? What's going on? He waved his hands and feet wildly. He realized that he had been transported to another space, on a slope where the wind was howling. In front of him was an old man. He immediately jumped back a few meters in a defensive stance like a praying mantis. At this moment, he couldn't trust anyone. And looking at the old man's face, he couldn't tell if he was as kind as Buddha. The old Taoist priest said in a voice that evil spirits like people with compatible horoscopes. He also said that if the male lead hadn't died in that coffin temple of that bastard Wen Ba, then he could be considered very lucky. Tan wondered to himself, but it was you who saved me from that deadly temple. He said thank you, but his eyes were like daggers as he looked at the old Taoist priest. The old man's attitude was indifferent. He said that there was no need to thank him. Even if he had encountered this situation, the male lead would still have turned disaster into good fortune. Seeing the Taoist priest turn and leave, Tan hurriedly ran after him. His face was obsequious, and he looked like a little dog trying to flatter its owner, except that he was missing a tail. He asked about Wen Ba and the coffin temple that the Taoist priest had just mentioned. The old man pointed to the temple. He explained the name of the temple. It had an entrance but no windows. It was low in the middle and had 2 high roofs made of stacked black stones. It was definitely an authentic black coffin. It was located in a valley surrounded by mountains. The gloomy energy was difficult to dissipate. This was Wen Ba. It was definitely not a good place. The way it was built went against the principles of burial. The longer it existed, the more it would damage the person's yin virtue and reduce their lifespan. I'm afraid that this place will not be usable for long before it becomes a forbidden place for the living. Young Tan's limbs went weak when he heard this. He was so scared that he almost peed blood. His heart screamed, where is this? Who am I? I want to go home. While the situation was favorable, the old Taoist priest told him another piece of good news: the head of the statue had disappeared. He warned him to be very careful of women with scars on their necks. If he was unlucky enough to meet one, he should immediately avoid her, or he would bring disaster upon himself. Tan gasped in surprise. Oh my God, did ancient women also know the art of changing heads? He respectfully thanked the old Taoist priest, praising him as a skilled Taoist priest. He begged the old man to help him return to the present day. But whether or not he could return depended on the author's decision. So why was he begging the old Taoist priest? After the old man refused, saying that he, the temple, and the ghosts of the father and son had been destined to meet. The natural law of the Tao, the balance of yin and yang, and the fate of karma were all things that he had to figure out for himself. Tan fell silent and then clasped his hands together to bow to the temple. The Taoist priest asked him why, and he said that he was doing it to thank the woodcutter and his son for warning him and helping him avoid danger. Although this father and son were strange, they didn't harm him. Good people should rest in peace and be reborn. They shouldn't suffer in this kind of place. After a moment of silence, the old Taoist priest spoke. He said that someone was coming towards the foot of the mountain. Tan squinted but couldn't see anyone. The old man said that ancient people said that poetry could make one an immortal. Literature could make one a saint. The light on their bodies could reach the heavens. Even a small scholar had a faint light on his body. It could help people become enlightened. The old Taoist priest took the opportunity to promote his book, Quang Bin Yu Shuo Tong Gan Lu, which contained a section on the art of observing qi. It described the primordial spirit of a scholar as the Wen Ku Xing descending to the mortal world. 100 scholars would emit a bright light. He continued, saying that the person approaching had a light that was almost a zhang tall. At the very least, he would be a successful scholar. Tan's eyes widened in surprise. He quickly praised the old man's good eyesight and asked him how long his own scholar's aura was. Unexpectedly, the old Taoist priest suddenly appeared before him, covered in blood and dead. Tan thought to himself that his life was over. He realized that he had just been talking to a ghost. He knew that he shouldn't stay there any longer, so he ran away as fast as he could. But in this story, if Tan was the second most unlucky person, then no one was more unlucky than him. When it came to bad luck, it just kept coming. He was running when he slipped and fell down a slope. As soon as he got up, he saw a horse-drawn carriage rolling towards him. The sound of bells rang through the air. At the tea house, the storyteller was excitedly telling the tale of Lei Gong Bu Shi. The case revolved around a farmer named Kai Liang who was returning home early from work. He was looking forward to seeing his wife and children. Unfortunately, he was struck by lightning and killed on the way. To make matters worse, Kai Liang's arm had disappeared. The villagers were terrified when they saw the body. Fearing that bad luck would befall them, they drove Kai Liang's wife and children away. According to the old storyteller, Tan had appeared and dispelled the doubts and tricks that had been used to stage the crime. The huge hole in the ground was clearly caused by explosives, but the villagers were blind to it. They directly accused him of making baseless accusations. "I've been putting up with you guys for too long." Anyone else would have said that, but our male lead chose the secret ultimate move. The villagers immediately changed their tune and went to report him to the authorities. That same night, the county magistrate, Zhang, heard about the case and sent someone to investigate. Based on the evidence provided by Tan, they successfully apprehended the criminal. This prisoner was quite perverted, my friends. Not only did he dream of seizing the victim's property, but he also wanted to seize his wife and children. That's just plain greedy. Thanks to this, the wrongful accusation was resolved. The storyteller continued to lead the ignorant fools who were listening to the story with their eyes wide open. They eagerly asked the swindler storyteller what Tan looked like. Taking advantage of the situation, the storyteller shamelessly bragged that he had been fortunate enough to meet Tan. He described him as being majestic and handsome, with extraordinary talent and appearance. He was 8 feet tall and 8 feet wide, causing everyone who heard the story to gasp in amazement. He added that Tan was carried by the wind, and that his work was satisfactory. Any young lady who married him would be blessed for 8 lifetimes. At the same time, our male protagonist, dressed in white, was sitting upstairs. He had just taken a sip of tea when he spat it all out upon hearing his physical appearance being described in such a bizarre way. "What do you mean, 8 feet tall and 8 feet wide? This old man is talking nonsense. If he can exaggerate to such an extent, then I am impressed. It's like saying that our protagonist is exactly like a rice cake." The waiter came over to chat. He took the opportunity to praise Tan as a handsome and talented man, and said that many girls secretly wished to go to the Qingming Temple Fair with him. Tan looked doubtful and asked if the Qingming Temple Fair was really that famous. The waiter exaggerated and said that it was famous for hundreds of miles. According to him, it was a very famous festival. The Temple of Literature and Martial Arts was open to the public. Inside, there was a 1,000-year-old sacred tree that was tall and majestic. Its leaves swayed like shiny coins. He said that anyone who saw the Yaochen tree would quickly become rich overnight. That sounded interesting. If it was that easy to get rich, then there wouldn't be any roots left on the tree. Tan stood up and generously gave the waiter a few coins. He thought to himself that the world was full of worthless rumors and legends. He left the tea house, which was full of dramatic stories that were more exciting than Korean dramas. Tan was walking back to the inn when he suddenly stopped in his tracks at the sound of Dodo's cries. She ran towards him, begging him not to beat her. In her hand, she held a jade pendant that she had just stolen from the bag of a poor Taoist priest. Behind her were two women who were chasing after her, constantly repeating the words, "Stop right there, or else." Only a fool would stop and get beaten up. She bumped into him. The shopkeeper, who was also the girl's aunt, asked in a panic if Dodo was okay. "Didn't I tell you not to run around? Let me see what you have in your hand." Tan hugged the child and asked her what was wrong. She stuffed the object into his hand and ran away crying. She shouted, "Auntie, I won't do it again." The male protagonist now had his answer. Looking at the girl, it seemed that she was okay. The shopkeeper hurriedly apologized to him and then sent her maid, Ling Yun, to catch the little girl. He glanced at the sisters, Ling Yun and Dodo, and thought to himself that this girl was quite formidable. She was not to be trifled with. Tan smiled and pretended not to mind. He handed the jade pendant back to her. He asked the shopkeeper if the object was damaged. It looked very valuable. At this moment, her face wrinkled up like a monkey's. She said that it was not valuable at all. It was an object from the Taoist priest's bag. She guessed that he had no money and had run away to avoid his debts. Tan thought about it. The shopkeeper continued, saying that she would sell his bag to get some money back for the shop. After she finished speaking, he asked her about the old Taoist priest. He asked her if he was wearing a 5-colored Taoist robe. He was middle-aged and wore flip-flops on his feet. I mean, he wore blue and white shoes. The shopkeeper nodded in agreement and wondered how he knew him. Tan looked at the jade pendant in the shopkeeper's hand and thought to himself, that Taoist priest had great magical powers. Perhaps there were some secret Taoist techniques in his bag. Wouldn't that be a great bargain? Tan thought and acted immediately. He told her that he knew the old man. He would buy all of his things, including the mountain goat in the backyard, and pay off his debts for him. This guy is so rich. San Review could only sigh in envy. The shopkeeper was very happy. When it came to money, her eyes shone brighter than car headlights. She turned to Ling Yun and told her to bring all the items that he wanted to buy. Free shipping to his room. Tan walked past Ling Yun and Dodo. His handsomeness was simply radiant. The light emitted by the protagonist was so dazzling that Dodo lost all sense of shame and demanded to marry him, even though the two beautiful women beside her were shocked. Cock wanted to bang Dodo's head for her overly bold statement. Being handsome was also a sin. Who told you to be so handsome that even a child wanted to take you home as her husband? It was already dark. Under the oil lamp, he opened the Taoist priest's bag. Inside, there was a jade pendant engraved with the 4 characters Wuzhang Daoren. It seems that this is his name. 2 cultivation manuals. Oh, my bad. Guangping Yu Shuo Tonggan Lu has a great origin. I heard that it even has a commentary. If one understands it thoroughly, one can play with the world in the palm of one's hand. Speaking of which, this secret manual is a Taoist legend. Why does the old Taoist priest have it? Back inside the bag, there was also a scroll of the Wuzhang Secret Transmission Sutra and a handwritten letter with a set of clothes. Outside the door, there was the sound of birds singing and gibbons calling. The hawker's cry that we often hear in martial arts films rang out. The weather is dry, be careful with fire. Lying on the bed and reading the contents of the letter, Tan couldn't help but frown and think. The letter only said, Wuzhang Taoist friend, it has been 3 years since you and I parted ways. I miss you very much. I spent 6 years and finally found a clue about the gathering treasure basin. I am in the Pingyuan mansion of Zhonghuyan. There is a bronze bell hanging under the eaves on the left as a sign. I await your arrival, Taoist friend, to discuss the Tao together. Tan wondered what the gathering treasure basin was. Was it the willow money tree that the waiter at the tea house had mentioned? But if the willow money tree was the gathering treasure basin, then it would have been dug up long ago. There wouldn't even be a root left. Tan's face was darker than a pot. Thinking back to the tragic death of the old Taoist priest, he secretly affirmed that it was not something good. As he was sighing about the mysteries that Zhonghuyan was hiding, he himself was having a hard time staying alive. let alone avenging the Taoist priest and the father and daughter. His eyes fell on the 2 books on the table. Perhaps he could cultivate on his own. He decided to sit in meditation and cultivate hard to improve his cultivation. But as the old saying goes, only with food can one cultivate the Tao. The next morning, in contrast to the carefree cow grazing, Tannen, who had been meditating all night without eating or drinking, was so tired that his limbs were weak and he had to lean on a pillar to stand. It seemed that before he could reach the realm of the Wuzang Taoist master, he would have to return to his ancestors. The most important thing now was to replenish his energy. 30 minutes later, Tannen realized that he had to eat his fill. Eating his fill was a practical way to show his respect for the Wuzang Taoist master. He went to the medical clinic and happened to come across an unsolved murder case. He only heard the sound of crying. "Zinger, why did you leave like this? My poor daughter-in-law." The high-level gossipers around said that the young lady had gone to the river to wash clothes. For some unknown reason, she fell into the water. When she was brought back here, her feet were already cold. Those who heard this couldn't help but click their tongues. Their imaginations were very rich, and they blurted out the question, "Is it a water ghost demanding a life?" Think if this guy were to write content for horror movies, it would be very good. Looking at the old couple and their son, who looked like the husband of the corpse, crying, and then the rumors of ghosts and demons taking her away spread from the people surrounding the murder case. Tannen said loudly that this was not a water ghost demanding a life. A government official recognized him. He asked if he was Master Tannen. The county magistrate had praised him highly for the Thunderclap corpse identification case. He asked Tannen to come forward and investigate the situation. The people around heard this and their eyes widened like those of doves. They whispered and looked at him with admiration. Tannen stepped forward and said to the 2 officials, "I have some guesses, but I don't dare to confirm them yet. Can you let me examine the body of the woman?" The official respectfully invited him. The faces of the 3 relatives of the deceased woman tightened as they watched him. He was about to pull up her clothes to examine the body when her husband stopped him. The family of the ill-fated girl scolded him for being rude. The mother-in-law opened her mouth and shouted, "My daughter-in-law's body is not even cold yet. Do you want to insult her body?" Her husband, who was a little crazy, dared to call him a pervert. "Just kidding, our male lead is so handsome. He doesn't lack women, so why would he play with a corpse?" The official was angry when he saw his idol being insulted. He pointed his sword at the people with crooked mouths and shouted, "If you are rude and talk nonsense, I will send you all to the police station." They all shut up. Tannen said bluntly, "I'm afraid this woman didn't drown. She was murdered." Speaking of which, San Review remembers the famous Detective Conan. Wherever he goes, there is a murder case. Back to the case, the people were in an uproar. The husband bullied Tannen and said that his wife had just died. "Don't insult her body. You're talking nonsense. Do you have any humanity?" The gossipers also followed suit and cursed. "What's going on? They're trying to solve the case, but you're calling them nonsense?" Tannen was not afraid. "You can't escape, my boy." He whispered to the official to protect him. However, the official advised him to leave because they were angry and difficult to deal with. Of course, the male lead stayed. Under the protection of the official, he directly interrogated the suspicious husband. The woman's belly is as big as a drum. Her lips were purple, her chest was swollen, and her hair was standing on end. It was confirmed that she had drowned. However, there were still some suspicious points that needed to be answered by the young master. The husband's face turned pale. He continued his investigation. After a person falls into the water, they will struggle desperately. Therefore, there will be mud and sand in their clothes and inside their nose and mouth. If she had drowned in the river, her body would be too clean. Could it be that she drowned somewhere in the house and her body was then thrown into the river? The people around heard this and became restless. They crowded around to see for themselves, ignoring the fact that they were eating. Tannen continued to point out the unusual points. "Look at her fingernails. They're all covered in moss. So are her feet. Tell me, is there anyone who walks in such a way that the tips of their shoes are more worn than the soles? Or are they so crazy that they like to walk on tiptoe?" I can confirm that she was thrown into a small space. She wanted to climb up the wall. She kept stomping and struggling, which led to this. The crowd started to get rowdy. Some people even said that the woman had come back as a ghost to seek revenge. Just thinking about it made them scared. The husband tried to cover up his guilt and pointed at Tannen, accusing him of talking nonsense. If Zinger drowned, what difference does it make whether she drowned in a well or a river? Why would we have to pull her body out of the well and then throw it into the river? Only an idiot would do that. His parents were speechless. They must have been wondering how they could have given birth to such a stupid son. When you're angry, you lose your mind. The husband's mouth got him into trouble, and he blurted out all the evidence of his crime. Our male lead achieved his goal and smiled, revealing his flawless white teeth. He said that he had never mentioned that Zinger had died in a well. He also said that the husband didn't seem very intelligent. The official ordered the arrest of the criminal. Tannen stood there silently, looking at the body. His eyes suddenly lit up as if he had realized something. The woman's body gradually changed. Tannen stopped the people from stepping over it as they prepared to leave. Suddenly, a bright light shone from the body. It was so bright that it almost blinded him. Where had it come from? The image of the woman surrounded by light gradually faded and disappeared. The only thing left was a number, 250 virtue points. Tannen was still in a daze. What the hell was going on? What were virtue points? Who was lacking in virtue? As the number flew towards him, he realized something was wrong. It was getting closer and closer. He was suddenly grateful that he had learned the spirit observation technique from the book Guang Ping Yu Shuo Tong Gan Lu yesterday. Since he had just cultivated it, Tannen immediately used it. Come on. Do you think I'm afraid of you? He recited the incantation. Those who do good deeds will be rewarded with good fortune. Those who do evil deeds will be punished. After much effort, our male lead finally realized that the light was a decree. It included 100 virtue points to clear Li Kaliang's name, another 100 virtue points to clear Yang Zinger's name. The remaining 50 virtue points were the result of his helping others by solving wrongful death cases. While he was still in a state of enlightenment, the parents of the deceased girl came to thank him. Tannen wondered if he had cultivated too much. Why were the two parents' words of gratitude so harsh? This made Tannen very embarrassed. He comforted Zinger's parents. He saw Ling Yun's figure and asked to leave. He didn't wait for them to thank him or give him a reward. He ran after her and gallantly paid for 2 buns for Ling Yun, who had the eyes of a hunting owl. Ling Yun asked him bluntly if he had something to ask her. He nodded in response. He took the opportunity to ask her name. After some investigation, he found out that her surname was Zhang and her name was Ling Yun. He flattered her, saying that she must have a lot of knowledge since she had studied martial arts since she was a child. His ultimate goal was to ask her where he could buy martial arts manuals to improve his level. This guy is really putting on a show. If we were from Haifeng, we would get straight to the point. Haifeng people don't beat around the bush. I thought that by buying Ling Yun 2 buns, she would answer me right away, but no. Ling Yun may be cute, but she's not easy. Tannen didn't give up. He used the excuse of having a martial arts dream, a lone figure on the cold river, an enemy of the pugilistic world. It is said that every man dreams of being a martial arts hero, wielding a sword and wandering the world. Only I can kill others, others cannot kill me. Although she brought him back to reality, she criticized his martial arts skills. She said that she didn't mean to discourage him, but considering Tannen's age, he was past the best time to learn martial arts. Even if he trained hard for 10 years, he would still be killed by others. Tannen pondered this, because his real goal was to find a way home. He was surprised when Ling Yun handed him a manual called the Blood Saber Scripture. She boasted about her heroic deeds. Ling Yun proudly said that she had killed a flower-picking rapist and obtained this book. She insisted that it was suitable for Tannen. He looked at the book and sighed. I'm so handsome and majestic. Do I really have to learn martial arts from a rapist's manual? That's ridiculous. But something is better than nothing. Ling Yun interrupted his train of thought. She explained that although it was only a third-rate saber technique, if one could cultivate it to the point of mastery, it would be enough to hold a position of power in the county. This saber technique was divided into 6 levels. It allowed one to cultivate a crimson blood mirror within their body. In battle, one could use it to attack their opponent, leaving them unable to react. Tannen thanked Ling Yun. He offered her the box of powder he was holding as a thank you gift. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. Each of them was lost in their own thoughts. He felt that he had made a good deal, trading a box of powder for a manual. Ling Yun's face was redder than a ripe persimmon as she thanked him. Well, he was doing his duty and flirting with a girl at the same time. Impressive, impressive. The moon was bright and the wind was gentle. Instead of enjoying the moonlight and drinking tea, Tannen was sitting there, looking at the pile of medicinal herbs in front of him. At a glance, I could only recognize ginseng root and musk. As for the rest, you'll have to ask Tannen. He had tried many methods, but the pile in front of him had not changed at all. He was wondering how to combine them into a useful tonic when an idea came to him. Earlier that day, when he had heard the words decree, his whole body had felt lighter. He wondered if these 2 words could be used on medicinal herbs. No sooner said than done. Our male lead danced and twirled to the tune of Dun Che. He muttered the words decree over and over again. He tried his best to change his appearance, but nothing happened. He realized that it wasn't a matter of changing his appearance. He tried again, concentrating all his energy on the decree, just like he had done that morning. After a while, there was a reaction. A bright light filled the space, startling the sleeping bee. The tonic was complete. Personally, I don't think our male lead looks very trustworthy. I don't know if it's effective or not. It's just a pity that the bee, which was perfectly fine, suddenly became a guinea pig for Tan-An's new medicine. There was a loud cry, and then, no more. The sky turned bright. In the middle of the courtyard, the bee, after being a guinea pig for the experimental medicine, was now running around Tan-An in circles. I felt dizzy watching it. Tan-An's face was stern, and he was holding a large saber. He couldn't help but think that this saber was really special. It was so sharp that it hurt his eyes. He didn't expect that after taking the medicine, he would cultivate the 5-organ secret scripture and the blood saber scripture so quickly and achieve enlightenment. He decided that he had to buy more medicinal herbs. He stepped out of the Tang pharmacy. He was carrying several bags of medicinal herbs. He thought that after one night, he would be able to cultivate the crimson blood chi to the 3rd level. The male lead promised himself that he would continue to train hard tonight. Then he heard the villagers talking about something. Tan-An's ears perked up as he eavesdropped. They were gossiping about a man named Lin Lu who had been possessed by evil spirits. They had invited a Taoist priest to perform an exorcism, but they had heard that his wife's grave had been robbed. The head of his corpse had been thrown away somewhere. They were currently looking for people to carry the coffin. They invited each other to go and watch the fun. Tan-An was the king of gossip. The prince of drama, the golden boy in the village, was always present when there was a case. How could he miss this fascinating case? He said one word correctly, making the younger brothers who were gossiping look as stupid as cows wearing ribbons. They wondered where this guy had come from. He squeezed through the crowd. Everyone was gossiping. Tan-An struggled to get inside to see what was going on. In front of him was a group of people. There was a young man and an old woman beside him who looked like his mother, a group of servants, and a Taoist priest. Next to them was a bamboo cage with a rooster in it. He looked down at the pit and saw a white coffin tied up like a rice cake with a rope. Suddenly, the Taoist priest asked young Master Lin if there was anyone in his family who was born in the year of the tiger. If so, he asked them to leave the area. Young Master Lin was puzzled and asked the Taoist priest, surnamed Chen, why he had to do that. He immediately received a long answer, saying that the Taoist priest had just looked at the feng shui around there. The southwest corner, opposite his deceased wife's grave, also had a mountain called the White Tiger Mountain, which was biting his deceased wife's grave. One mountain cannot have 2 tigers. The white tiger is the master of killing. 2 tigers will inevitably fight, leading to bloodshed. Therefore, people born in the year of the tiger should retreat 100 feet and turn their backs. They should not look towards the grave. At this moment, young Master Lin coughed as if he had never coughed before. His mother beside him supported him. He then turned around and told his servant, Aban, to inform the people in the clan who were born in the year of the tiger about what the Taoist priest had just said. The servant left immediately. Tan-An watched him go and wondered why someone had left. The Taoist priest said loudly that the hour of noon was approaching. When I heard this, I thought they were going to behead the audience like in those palace dramas. It turned out that it was the most yang time to lift the coffin. After saying that, the Taoist priest walked over to the coffin pit and read aloud, Southern Bing Ding Fire. The rooster corresponds to the vermilion bird. Then he threw the rooster down. Immediately, a red evil energy spread around the lid of the white coffin. The Taoist priest continued, the evil spirits have retreated. The hour of noon has arrived. He shouted, lift the coffin. As soon as he finished speaking, 4 strong young men jumped down, watched curiously by the people. Their legs were firmly planted on the ground, and their shoulders were carrying the coffin pole. They looked very impressive. But wait, after about 2 seconds, there was a creaking sound as if the coffin pole was about to break, but the coffin still hadn't moved a nanometer off the ground. It's so embarrassing. Everyone around looked at each other in amazement, like geese. The old Taoist priest also grimaced and couldn't say a word. The 2 coffin bearers at the back were now suspicious. Could it be that this coffin is filled with rocks? It's too heavy. Or maybe the person in the coffin doesn't want to leave? As soon as the words were out of their mouths, they were immediately scolded by the 2 people in front. You haven't seen how scared I am. I'm about to pee my pants. How can you still say such things? The old Taoist priest, who had been silent until now, finally made a move. He took 3 incense sticks and flew down to the bottom. To everyone's astonishment, it turned out that he had gone down to help the 4 men carry the coffin. They struggled for a long time before finally getting the coffin up safely. The old Taoist priest looked at the mother and son and said, "Wait for me to find your wife's skull and bury her again. I, the old Taoist priest, will carefully help the deceased in this white coffin." Suddenly, the rope tying the coffin broke. He hurriedly shouted, "I won't let the coffin fall to the ground. Otherwise, there will be a murder." Everyone immediately stepped back. Only our male lead was still engrossed in the gossip and didn't move. Young Master Lin looked sad and asked the old Taoist priest what to do. He was told that he couldn't force the coffin to be carried. The old Taoist priest turned to look at Tannen and thought to himself that this man was upright and resolute, a demeanor he had never seen before. Moreover, he had raised his hand to cast a spell. Tannen narrowed his eyes and asked him what he was planning to do. Had he never seen a handsome and talented man gossiping before? But the old lady surnamed Lin spoke up and said, "How dare you be so rude? I'm just asking this Taoist priest what he's going to do. Am I taking food from your mouth or stealing your clothes? Why are you calling me rude?" The old Taoist priest's face was now wrinkled. He said affectionately, "Little brother, can I borrow a step to talk? The old Taoist has something to ask for." The male lead immediately agreed. After all, helping others is a good thing. He followed the old Taoist priest, leaving the others to gossip about him. It seemed that they had recognized him as the person who had solved the strange cases in Skull County. Even the 3-year-old child was clamoring to marry him. While they were still chattering, they heard their idol's angry voice. "This is really annoying. How can you ask me to carry the body down the mountain? Is that human language?" The old Taoist priest cleared his throat in front of Tan En's unfriendly expression and immediately gave him another purpose. He told him that if he didn't want to carry the body down the mountain, he wouldn't make things difficult for him. However, there was another way. His fate was too prominent, so he wanted him to help carry the coffin. Maybe it would be successful. He also carefully put on a serious face and said that there would be no danger in doing this. If it was successful, it would also be a good thing. Infinite merit. The final blow scratched Tan En's itch. The words infinite merit echoed in his head. This time, he had to do it. He immediately nodded in agreement. At the Lin family's residence, Tannen and the old Taoist priest carried the coffin into the mansion. While he was still rubbing his shoulder joint, old Chen read something like, "The earth has earth energy, which can easily hide evil energy. The top of the head has a moon yin." It turned out that our male lead hadn't even finished loading the data when he was asked to hold the ink tube again. Looking at the coffin, he couldn't help but wonder why this white coffin had a bulletproof line. He asked the Taoist priest if he had done it. The Taoist priest replied that it was not originally from the Taoist family, but the golden body of a high monk after he had passed away. The yang energy was deep. Moreover, this coffin was made of iron flower wood. The body inside was either rich or noble. He thought to himself that this kind of status could still occupy the tomb of a commoner. Old Chen continued to explain that a rich family would definitely have strange things happen. This was also the reason why he didn't let the Lin family cremate the coffin. Otherwise, the owner of the coffin would definitely come looking for them and play hide and seek. As soon as he finished speaking, the coffin suddenly shook violently as if the person inside was dancing the 8 extremities boxing vigorously. Tannen was so scared that he almost had a heart attack. He stammered and asked why it was moving so violently. He was also scared out of his wits, but he still had to maintain his dignity. The old Taoist priest also stammered and affirmed that he had a magic weapon to suppress it under the suspicious gaze of the male lead. Who would believe that? Seeing the evil energy spreading and shaking excessively, Tannen took a risk and slapped the coffin lid. Within a minute, the coffin returned to a state of stillness. It really didn't make any more noise. Old Chen said that he and the Lin brothers would stay here tonight. After confirming that there was no more danger, they would go and look for the madam. He then thanked Tannen for his help. He thought to himself that he didn't expect the male lead's fate to be able to suppress the fierce master in the white coffin. Oh my god, it's wonderful. Leaving the Lin family, Tannen smiled happily. Every step he took while carrying the coffin just now had brought him more virtue. Old Chen's words about infinite merit turned out to be true. This deal was too good. He could get more virtue points and upgrade his herbs. While he was still feeling happy, swish. Ling Yun's branch swept past him. She blocked him in front. She asked Tannen if he had come to Bifa to be a coffin carrier today. The male lead misunderstood her and thought she wanted to chase him away. He quickly said that he would pack his things and leave immediately. Ling Yun quickly said that she just wanted to use the willow branch to ward off evil spirits. She was immediately approached by Tannen, who shamelessly asked her to come over and use her most powerful move to hit him. Without saying a word, Ling Yun directly gave our male lead a few slaps in the face. Immediately after, there was a very miserable scream. Late at night at the Lin family's, in a room dimly lit by oil lamps. Young Master Lin was resting with his head in his hands when suddenly there was a noise on the ceiling that grew louder and more urgent. He immediately woke up and started coughing violently. He also had to go to the toilet. The group of people, including Taoist Chen, were still guarding outside. What is this noise? There wasn't even the sound of the night watchman. Could it be coming from the coffin? Speaking of which, Taoist Chen was outside. If anything happened, they would be the first to find out. He thought about it, but his hands and feet unconsciously reached out to the window to confirm. Young Master Lin had made a very wrong move. He had never seen the world before. He looked around and guessed that it was the sound of the wind. When he looked up, he was really scared. A terrifying head with disheveled hair, black eyes that were darker than sewage, and bared white teeth. Meow, 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 give me back my mind. He immediately fell backwards. He had been discovered. Lin Lu directly fainted on the spot. A new day had arrived. Tan and had broken through to the 4th level of the red blood art after a night of cultivation. There was a knock on the door. He quickly went out. The person outside immediately said that someone from the Lin family had come to deliver a message. Taoist Chen invited him over. Tan and immediately frowned. Could something have happened to the white coffin? He hurriedly went to the Lin family. When he arrived, he saw a group of curious villagers who were watching the strange sight being chased away by the servants. When he saw Tan, he changed his attitude immediately, even faster than flipping a pancake. He respectfully invited Tan in. In the Lin family hall, the servants and guards were all dispirited. Old Chen looked at the white coffin in silence. He wondered why there were no women around. It was as quiet as a deserted temple. How could he do business like this? He walked over and asked Old Chen what was going on. Old Chen immediately said that someone had broken in last night and stolen the body. He had also pretended to be a ghost to scare Lin Lu into fainting. The atmosphere in the courtyard was like death. He immediately asked if the body of the grieving woman was still there. Old Chen nodded and said that he suspected that the women who cooked the food had been possessed by something. He had given them medicine to make them faint. He was currently investigating. Suddenly, the door behind him opened and a woman who seemed to be a servant of the Lin family was kicked out like a bird. The old madam pointed at her face and said that she had found the culprit. This attracted the attention of the two people, one old and one young, who were discussing the matter. The old madam said that she was the culprit. It was really unexpected that she would do such a thing, even though the maid cried and repeatedly insisted that she did not do it. Old Chen stepped forward to stop her and said that the female servant was also a victim. He then turned to ask her if anything strange had happened after she had carried the coffin yesterday. She immediately said that Chen Pai was following her. Old Chen and Tan looked at each other in confusion. At the Duoshangren medicine shop, the fortune teller kicked open the door and shouted Chen Pai's name. Where are you? Come out here. This dark-hearted man, come out here. Hong Bei, oh, where is it? It will be a long time before I tell you. Why would I put my head in a noose? Hee hee. Tan stood there thoughtfully, feeling that there was something wrong with this incense shop. The speed at which the people caught on was even faster than my phone when searching for Wi-Fi. Everyone. They were all asking what the people who had rushed into the shop were doing, and some of them replied that they were looking for Chen Pai, the disciple of the shop owner. The shop owner had just died, and his golden disciple had already caused trouble. Then he assessed the level of animosity between the two sides. Old Chen immediately asked how the owner of the incense shop had died. It turned out that he had died in the mountains. He had been bitten by something and his body had almost been cut in two. He had lost an arm. His death was quite tragic. Speaking of which, Chen Pai had taken on a private job because his master had told him to. Tan immediately asked what the private job was, but he received a look that said, "Why are you asking me? It's better to ask your niece." Old Chen turned around and whispered, "Little brother, do you suspect the same thing as me?" He immediately received an answer from him with the same guess. The private job that Chen Pai had taken on was most likely to steal the body. Suddenly, there was a scream. Look! The soldier pointed to the crossbar. There was a body hanging there, swaying in the wind. As soon as he finished speaking, the body fell down. It was quite an impressive landing. The body's spine was broken and it fell backwards. Its limbs were broken, and a tree branch had pierced its wrist. Speaking of which, Chen Pai's face was very ugly in death. His mouth was wide open and bleeding, as if he had seen something terrifying before he died. Old Chen muttered that the dead man on the ceiling meant that something bad was going to happen. He overheard two soldiers guessing that Chen Pai seemed to have died a long time ago. How could he still go and steal the body? He's playing with fire. Dying and coming back to life is dying and coming back to life. Old Chen said calmly, "Don't panic. Quickly set up a pyre to burn the body, or it will rise again tonight." Is it too useless to tell me not to panic at this moment, old man? It's a good thing I didn't shit my pants. The other two men put on a face that said, I believe you. The bell rang again. Tan and immediately looked up at the wind chime hanging in front of the shop. A strange feeling rose in his heart. The 5 internal organs, the white coffin, the owner of the incense shop, and Chen Pai seemed to be unrelated. In fact, they were all related to the treasure basin. Old Chen interrupted his train of thought. He said seriously, little brother, the white coffin will not be at peace if it is not buried for a day. He said that he had to stay and burn the body, while he would go into the forest to find a feng shui place to bury the white coffin. After saying that, he left without looking back, leaving the male protagonist standing there with a blank expression. It took him 5 seconds to understand the problem. Before, he had been near the coffin temple when he discovered the body of the 5 internal organs. So many strange things had happened. It was impossible. Could it be that he was being drawn into a cycle of death? Was he going to get shot while lying down? Oh, no, that can't be. He had to quickly go and find a weapon to defend himself. After thinking about it, he immediately dashed out of the shop. It was already dark. The full moon hung high in the sky, giving off an eerie glow. From the ceiling, a paper effigy of a scapegoat floated down and landed on the steps, headed straight up to the room where our protagonist was staying. It was thin and flimsy. It groped its way through the narrow crack in the door and into the room, intending to play a game of cat and mouse with our protagonist. But who do you think he is? The number 1 handsome man with a shining aura is not so easily fooled by these little shrimps. He opened his eyes wide and stared at the paper effigy. Tan and drew out a new knife that he had just bought from the market with one hand. He cursed, "You beast, how dare you act so presumptuously? Today, I will let you taste the blade of my new knife." With a swipe, the wooden door burst open after his slash. Its speed was too fast. The little devil dodged the blow and disappeared. He stepped out of the room, surrounded by cold air. He muttered, "Where the hell did it go?" Suddenly, from above, the paper effigy swooped down. It dodged his slash with ease and circled around behind him, hugging the protagonist. Its mouth was smiling, making a disgusting sound. Its hands dug deeper into his body. Tan An's face darkened. Oh, shit. It's trying to possess me. I wonder if the red blood blade can deal with this persistent little devil. Whatever, I'll try it first and see. If it works, I'll eat it all. If it doesn't, what can I do now? After thinking about it, he used his energy and chanted a spell. The red blood blade appeared. Immediately, the effigy was knocked away. It was still giggling. Damn, it's about to die and it's still giggling. I've been putting up with you for a long time. Do you like to laugh? I'll give you a ticket to the afterlife. Tan An was about to finish off this idiot when it suddenly ran away. He shouted, "You beast, where are you going?" He chased it to a locked room. Without saying a word, he kicked the door open and entered. This room belonged to a swordsman. It was pitch black. Where was he? He smelled something strange. There was a trail of blood on the bed. From above, a figure holding a sword rushed towards him. This was the swordsman. He quickly dodged the sword strike. Tan An asked in a panic, "Brother, what's wrong with you? Why are you trying to kill me without saying a word? What a waste of heaven's gifts." The swordsman raised his head. His face was no different from a skull, like the ones that are often posted on high-voltage power poles. His corpse energy was too heavy. "I'm afraid he's been possessed by that little devil." The two sides fought fiercely, with one of them slashing down with a knife. The man jumped up. The possessed swordsman hit his head on a pillar. It seemed that he only knew how to use brute force. That way, it seemed easier to deal with. Tan An guessed to himself that his red blood blade had been trained to the 6th level. For his current state, he only needed to use all his strength to knock this guy out. He used his energy and chanted, "Red blood blade." The protagonist charged straight at the swordsman and sent him flying through the door. "That's all you've got, you beast?" He grabbed the swordsman by the neck and growled, "Get out of here now." Just then, the little devil tried to escape, but he stabbed it with his knife. It fell to the ground, still giggling. San Review boldly guesses that this little devil is a masochist. How can it still be giggling after being beaten up? He pulled out his knife. His face didn't change. The paper effigy kept laughing even though its body was burning. The swordsman's body lay sprawled behind him. From outside, a group of officials and soldiers entered. Someone had reported a fight here. Then they shouted at the protagonist, "How dare you fight here?" They ordered their men to arrest him. Oh, shit. He was reasonable but cunning. Tan An turned around and glared at the official. He immediately threw away the knife he had bought at the market. His eyes sparkled and he said with a smile, "My lord, this is so unfair. This young man deserved an Oscar for his performance." but he was still taken to the interrogation room. Under the magistrate's gaze, he closed his eyes tightly. He basically didn't dare to say a word. The magistrate continued, "We have examined the swordsman's body. It was not your knife that killed him." Tan and immediately praised the magistrate for his wisdom. In his heart, he was screaming, "Let me go. I have a lot to do. I don't have time to chat with you." Suddenly, the magistrate moved his sinister face closer. He whispered that our protagonist was hiding his true self and that his Taoist magic was similar to that of a lecher. In short, he wanted to know if there was any relationship between the two of them. This magistrate was really nosy. "Someone, please drag him away." Tannen looked away unnaturally and said with a forced smile, "I fell into a ravine and found a sword manual." He thought to himself, "Your daughter gave it to me. Should I tell you this? Should I explain it? I'm so scared that I'm sweating." The magistrate, surnamed Feng, laughed out loud. He said he was just curious and told him he could leave. Magistrate Feng was really funny. Tannen thanked him, but he was furious inside. Was he just curious? Why was he so strange? He was about to leave when he heard the magistrate ask him if he knew that the coroner had said that the swordsman's wounds were not human-made. Knowing that he could no longer hide it, the protagonist confirmed that the swordsman had been possessed by an evil spirit. There will be a swelling under his armpit. Magistrate Feng thanked Tannen solemnly and said that he would definitely investigate. After he bid farewell and left, Magistrate Feng looked back at him thoughtfully. He thought to himself that the protagonist could indeed see it. When he returned to the inn, Tannen pondered why he had been targeted by evil spirits. It didn't make sense. It couldn't be because he was too handsome that evil spirits wanted to follow him. Putting that absurd thought aside, he told himself that it wasn't right. It was highly likely that it was because he had helped to carry the coffin and had become acquainted with the Lin family. That was why the evil spirits wanted to possess him so that they could steal the body. His mind was racing so fast that he felt like his hair was turning white. But the surroundings were too noisy. The innkeeper was chasing after Dodo. The guests were clamoring for food and drinks. Tannen was sure that this was the result of the treasure basin. It seemed that he couldn't escape from this monkey. He slammed his hand on the table. This was the time to cultivate more secret manuals to kill evil spirits. Dodo ran over from afar and hugged Tannen's leg, saying, "Handsome brother, save me." The innkeeper immediately dragged her away. Tannen glanced at Ling Yun's graceful figure and handed the egg to Aquo. He lifted the little girl up and handed her to the innkeeper. Then he walked over to the girl with a friendly smile. Before he could even open his mouth to ask, Ling Yun threw a new secret manual at him. She said that she had witnessed his fight with the swordsman and praised him for his rapid progress. It just so happened that it was time to cultivate a new secret manual. Tannen was so happy that he almost jumped up. He praised Ling Yun for her understanding and her kind heart, but in his heart, he was crying a river of tears. He cursed her for being cold-blooded and not helping him when he was being beaten. Back in his room, Tannen looked for a jar. He collected deer ears, ginseng, and cordyceps herbs. He recited the blood spirit scripture. Boom! Purple smoke billowed out, signaling the failure of the elixir. He muttered to himself that he didn't know if the cultivation method recorded in the secret manual was reliable. He turned to the little girl standing behind him. Tannen walked over again, holding a jar of elixir. His face was indescribable. He looked at the little girl and asked her if she was free. Sensing the imminent danger, the little girl still couldn't run away. In a moment, she was drunk and hugging the empty jar. The protagonist judged her drinking capacity. At this time, in front of the prison for criminals, Lord Li and an official walked over. "My lord, it's the innermost cell." The official behind him looked at Lord Li and said fearfully. He immediately walked to the prison door and said that he wanted to see who was pretending to be a ghost. Then he ordered someone to open the door. The sound of the lock opening startled them. Both of them were stunned when they saw the figure of a man reaching out. This figure was too scary. The official stammered and asked Lord Li why this was so. He was still fine last night. Lord Li looked at the rotten corpse with red eyes. He was just as scared. But as a high-ranking official, he had to brace himself and order the coroner and magistrate Feng to be called. The official immediately carried out the order. Lord Li looked at the horrifying corpse in front of him. The coroner also came over to examine it. He confirmed that the body had died recently, but what were these large areas of bruises and black spots? He thought to himself that although the clothes were dry, the cause of death was obvious. As he was thinking, Lord Li asked him what the results were. The coroner replied respectfully, "My lord, after examining the body of Li Deshan, I can confirm that he died by drowning." The official immediately jumped up and said, "Drowning? You must be out of your mind. This is a dry prison. Did he drown on faith and hope? Moreover, Li Deshan is a serious criminal who hid gunpowder. Everyone is talking about him. How could we dare to torture him? Lord Li, who had been standing aside, finally spoke up and asked what was going on. Magistrate Feng said that this matter was suspicious and that he happened to know someone who could solve the case. This strange case had to be investigated clearly. In the prison, a man with a thick beard and a face as fierce as a rhinoceros slammed the table and shouted, "How is that possible? Li Deshan is a serious criminal under my supervision." Magistrate Feng interrupted him and asked if he was saying that he couldn't do his job. The petty official immediately flattered him and told him to calm down. He added that Magistrate Feng had said that the case was caused by evil spirits. Old Zheng didn't believe him. He raised his voice and said that there must be accomplices. Let's go and catch their lair. It is often said that enthusiasm plus ignorance equals destruction. When he was supported by an equally stupid ally, there was really no way to save him. In the evening, in Shangfan village, under the gloomy and windy forest, the house of the serious criminal Li Deshan loomed faintly. Old Zheng and two petty officials walked over. One of them said, "My lord, look quickly. Li Deshan's house is lit up." Old Zheng wasn't blind, so of course he could see it. He cleared his throat. "This is exactly what I expected. Let's quickly surround the house. Capture them alive." Haha. What a joke. With only 3 of them, what could they surround? The 3 of them approached the house. Through the window frame, they could see the figure of a man with his head bowed. In the dim light of the oil lamp, his shadow fell on the thatched wall. Old Zheng stepped forward and knocked on the door. He said in a shrill voice, "Old Shang, I'm a night traveler. May I ask for a night's lodging?" He waited for a long time, but there was no response. The petty official asked Old Zheng if the people in the house had fallen asleep. He didn't say anything and pushed the door open. A foul smell rushed out, making them almost vomit. This was definitely the smell of a decomposing corpse. They rushed in to take a look, but they couldn't see anything, not even a mosquito. Old Zheng turned around and told one of them to stand guard outside. The other one, Hey Bai, would follow him inside to search. The 2 of them stepped inside. A creepy feeling ran down their spines. From the ceiling, a strange green smoke appeared. Old Zheng wondered what it was. He had clearly seen someone in the house just now. He asked Hey Bai if he felt like there were eyes watching their every move. It was very gloomy and scary. Hey Bai was so scared that he couldn't even speak. He almost wanted to scream and run away. He replied that he felt the same way. Old Zheng sent Hey Bai to the window to see if there was anything unusual. When he didn't answer, Old Zheng turned around and asked him, "What a coincidence." His Hey Bai was dead, kneeling on the ground. Old Zheng shouted his name. Just then, the oil lamp went out, signaling that something terrible was about to happen to him. He swung his saber around and shouted, Who did this? Come out now. Come out here." He slowly backed towards the door. Before he could escape, the door was slammed shut by a ghostly wind. He banged on the door and shouted, "Open the door. What the hell is going on? Open the door now." A ghostly hand reached out and touched his shoulder affectionately. Old Zheng's eyes widened in terror. In his mind, he heard the words, "Goodbye, old man." After that, I'm sure you can guess what happened. Let's talk about the petty official outside. He waited for a long time, but no one came out. He searched the tiny house, but he couldn't find anyone. He was more anxious than a mother waiting for her child to come home from the market. The back door slammed shut, making him suspicious. He called for Old Zheng, but there was no answer. He was about to shout, "Open the door," and rush in, when the door opened. Old Zheng, fat and bloated, walked out. The petty official asked him if he had caught the criminal. "Are you going back now? Where's Hey Bai?" Old Zheng didn't answer him. "Why are you asking so many questions? Be careful, or you'll join your ancestors soon." A few days later, at the Zheng residence, the sound of knocking was heard. The butler, Shang Ba, ran out to see who it was. It was Magistrate Feng looking for Old Zheng. He asked Shang Ba where Old Zheng had gone. He hadn't been home for several days. There were some cases that needed his confirmation. Shang Ba replied that he had come at the wrong time. "Our master is not home. I don't know when he'll be back." He thought to himself that Old Zheng hadn't been seen since he went to Li Deshan's house. What the hell happened? After thinking about it, Magistrate Feng left. He said he would come back later. After Shang Ba bowed and saw Magistrate Feng off, he closed the door to the mansion and turned to look at Old Zheng's room. He thought to himself that recently, there had always been a smell of rotten meat coming from the master's room. He wasn't allowed to go near it, so he didn't know what Old Zheng was doing in there all day. Curious and nosy, the butler took advantage of Old Zheng's absence to open the door and step inside. The stench was so bad that he thought he was going to get nasal cancer. Suddenly, he sensed a tall figure behind him. It was filled with murderous intent. The butler also smelled a strong scent of powder. He turned around. "Oh my God. When did you come back, master?" The man's face was covered in thick makeup, making him look hideous. The butler stammered that he wanted to clean the room for his master. Just as he was about to say more, he saw old Jung's head detach from his neck. It elongated and hung down. At this moment, on the roof of the Jung mansion, Magistrate Feng, who had not left, was hiding and witnessing everything. He heard the butler's screams. Scene change. Taoist priest Chen and Jin faced each other affectionately. They then aggressively picked up their chopsticks and bowls and ate their food without missing a beat. Jin wondered if it wasn't Taoist priest Chen who had invited him to eat. "Why did Magistrate Feng invite you?" Taoist priest Chen asked, munching on a chicken leg. "He didn't hide his intentions. Wasn't it because he was afraid you wouldn't come?" He said that he was so hungry that he was about to die from waiting for the main character. He told Magistrate Feng to find them because he had something to say. After a moment of silence for the two starving ghosts, Magistrate Feng spoke up. He told them to eat slowly. He said that he did have something to discuss. He said that Li Deshan had hidden gunpowder without permission. A few days ago, he had died suddenly in prison. He asked the two men who were still chewing if they knew about this. Jin nodded and said that he had heard that Li Deshan had died of a serious illness. Magistrate Feng asked them not to spread the news about today's events. He didn't hide the fact that he found Li Deshan's death very strange. It didn't seem like a normal death. Jin stopped eating immediately and asked Magistrate Feng directly. He said that he felt that the two of them were masters who could see evil. Therefore, he wanted to invite them to help investigate the real cause of Li Deshan's death. Jin asked if the case hadn't already been closed. He had heard that Magistrate Trin had eliminated Li Deshan's accomplices. Thinking of the image of old Trin's head hanging down, Magistrate Feng hesitated. Jin said, "Could it be that Magistrate Feng suspects there's a traitor in the Yamen?" He thought to himself, could Magistrate Trin be the traitor? If he helped Magistrate Feng, would he gain some merit? Taoist priest Chen sat opposite him, holding a huge bowl of rice. He told the main character to agree to help Magistrate Feng. Seeing how sincere he was, not helping him would go against his conscience. So they both nodded in agreement. They said that since Magistrate Feng had asked them, as good citizens, they couldn't refuse. On the surface, they flattered him, but in their hearts, they were only thinking about the merit they would gain and the delicious meals they would have in the future. The main character and Taoist priest Chen really put on a good show. Magistrate Feng was very grateful. The three of them raised their glasses to the upcoming battle. They all went to the prison. Behind Magistrate Feng, Jin and Taoist priest Chen whispered to each other about a treasure called the 100 Treasures Mirror. Magistrate Feng kept talking about how they had to find out the cause of Li Deshan's death tonight, no matter what. But the other two weren't paying attention to his request. Magistrate Feng coughed and urged them to go in. Taoist priest Chen reluctantly put away his treasure, even though Jin kept trying to reach out and ask to see his great treasure sword again. Magistrate Feng was very tired, but he didn't want to say it. In the dark prison, the prisoners were all talking about something. He's here, he's here. Jin turned to look at the female prisoner. She kept saying that it wasn't clean. Is she saying that I'm dirty? He thought to himself that these people were crazy. The three of them walked to the cell where Li Deshan was being held. They looked at the sticky liquid on the ground. But Jin's spirit vision technique didn't work. He couldn't see anything unusual. Taoist priest Chen looked around and suddenly said, "This place is strange. The walls are clearly damp and moldy, but there are no snakes, worms, mice, or ants." Magistrate Feng didn't understand what Taoist priest Chen meant. He reached into his pocket to get his magic treasure. Taoist priest Chen continued to explain, "Worms and insects are the best at avoiding evil spirits. Perhaps there's something terrifying here that's scaring them away." Magistrate Feng asked, "Could there really be something evil in here?" Jin reassured him. He asked Taoist priest Chen what he was trying to do. Taoist priest Chen took out a bowl of rice for the dead, to welcome the gods and send off the ghosts, to investigate evil spirits. He insisted that there was an evil spirit in the prison. The proof was that the incense was burning faster than normal. Then, the burning incense suddenly snapped in half. Oh shit, what's going on? Even the spirit energy of the rice for the dead was cut off. This was probably an evil spirit that couldn't be appeased. Magistrate Feng asked the Taoist priest if he could exorcise the evil spirit. If he waited any longer, the prison would become a morgue. Taoist priest Chen looked serious. He said that the remaining spirit energy meant that the evil spirit had already left. Now, all they had to do was dig a hole to let the sunlight in. He spoke as if the house was on fire, but but his method of exorcism was too ordinary. The old man was clearly just putting on a show. Magistrate Feng hesitated and said that the evil spirit was still at large. He didn't notice that Jinan had already discovered his secret. Jinan reminded Magistrate Feng that this evil spirit was very dangerous. It would be better to investigate Magistrate Tren. Perhaps they would find something. Then, he pulled Taoist priest Chen away. The old Taoist priest was really a glutton. He asked Jinan, "Are we just going to leave? I thought he was going to invite us to another meal." The main character made a silencing gesture. Magistrate Feng definitely wouldn't let them go. And he was right. Magistrate Feng ran after them, shouting for them to stop. But Jinan was already smirking. Magistrate Feng couldn't hide his true intentions anymore. He said that Magistrate Trin had been acting strangely ever since he returned from Shangpan village. Specifically, Magistrate Trin kept avoiding him. Magistrate Feng himself couldn't confirm it. So he took the opportunity to invite Jinan and Taoist priest Chen to visit Magistrate Trin's house. It was getting dark. The full moon shone down on the ground. A servant from Magistrate Trin's residence was walking around with a lantern, patrolling the area. When he saw someone behind him, he turned around and stammered, "Master, you're back." The old man only replied with a grunt. After taking a few steps, he stuck his long neck out and asked the servant who was in his room, his face covered in white powder. "If I were that servant, I would have been scared to death." Suddenly, an orange flew out of nowhere. Magistrate Trin's head was still not attached to his body, but he caught the orange with his hand. He immediately retracted his neck back. It turned out that Magistrate Feng had thrown the orange to distract him, saving the servant's life. "Your taste is terrible." Magistrate Trin crushed the orange in his hand and glared at Magistrate Feng, confirming that he was not alone. There was a loud explosion, and dust and dirt flew everywhere. The servant's face was covered in blood. He opened his eyes wide in fear and shouted, "Help! Someone's been killed." The ceramic jar of exorcism wine was shattered. Taoist priest Chen looked at the large crater in front of him. The bodies of the servants were torn to pieces and scattered everywhere. Taoist priest Chen sighed. "We've made a mistake. Magistrate Trin has absorbed the yang energy of so many living people, and he blew up the bodies to escape." He turned to see Magistrate Feng covered in wounds. He stuttered and begged for help. Taoist priest Chen stepped forward and examined him. He almost wanted to punch him in the face. He said that he had only broken a few ribs and that his internal organs were not injured. Basically, he couldn't die. After a few seconds of silence, Magistrate Feng asked where Jinan was. Taoist priest Chen looked into the void. He said that Magistrate Trin had been splashed with the 3 yang wine, so he couldn't have gone far. Jinan had already chased after him. At this moment, our protagonist was chasing after Magistrate Trin, who was neither human nor ghost. He ran quickly and jumped over the wall to avoid Jinan's sword. He swung his sword down, but Jinan managed to block it. However, the pressure was not small. The sword was too heavy, and Jinan slid back a few steps. Magistrate Trin's face was now decomposing. Layers of rotten flesh began to fall off, revealing deep-set eyes. Could it be that the 3 yang wine was working? This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that he had to seize. With a loud shout, Jinan activated his Kai and unleashed his red blood palm technique. His entire body turned red and he charged towards Magistrate Trin. While he was weak, he had to kill him. A single sword strike pierced his heart and killed him instantly. 3 paper ghosts crawled out of his mouth. They were the same type as the He ghost. They must have considered Jinan their target. They split into 3 directions and tried to sneak attack Jinan, but their petty tricks couldn't fool him. He quickly unleashed another red blood palm attack, knocking all 3 paper ghosts to the ground. One of them was still alive and struggling. Jinan was about to finish it off, but at that moment, the patrolling gamebreakers arrived. They shouted loudly for the whole village to hear. They said that they had found someone suspicious ahead and rushed over. The paper ghost saw its chance and ran away. Jinan watched it go, thinking that it would be best not to get involved with the patrol. At Magistrate Trin's residence, Magistrate Feng was wrapped up like an Egyptian mummy. He looked resentful when Taoist priest Chen offered him tea to cool down. "He probably thinks I'm injured. Otherwise, I would have kicked him out of the residence." At that moment, Magistrate Trin's body flew in through the door, followed by Jinan. Magistrate Trin was dead. He had already died in Shangpan village. For the past few days, he had been nothing more than a ghost absorbing people's yang energy. Jinan continued, saying that the evil thing on him was a paper ghost, the same group as the corpse thieves. 2 of the paper ghosts had been killed, and the other one had escaped. Taoist priest Chen asked Jinan if he knew which way the paper ghost had gone. He replied that he had looked before leaving, and it seemed to have gone west. If we go west, we might find some clues. Taoist priest Chen was deep in thought. Magistrate Feng immediately added that there was a ghost fire in the west. Taoist priest Chen was puzzled, and Magistrate Feng's face was as tight as a bowstring about to snap. The protagonist, on the other hand, was deep in thought. Taoist priest Chen continued, "A ghost fire is someone who died unjustly. Only by returning home and being buried can the corpse's yin energy be dispelled. Otherwise, they will come back to life like a possessed ghost and harm people. In other words, a ghost fire is a corpse. Isn't that the legendary corpse chaser?" At this point, Magistrate Feng added some more information. It turned out that earlier, a ghostmaster had reported to the authorities that the ghost fire had been lost, but the government office had been focused on the Qingming Festival Temple Fair, so they temporarily arranged for him to stay at the Chengxi post station. Taoist priest Chen was suspicious. If the ghost fire was really helping the corpse thieves, then it seemed like everything that was happening now was not a coincidence. Jinan fell silent again. He was as quiet as a mouse. Magistrate Mummy tried to clasp his hands together in front of his chest and said that there were only 2 days left until the temple fair. He begged Jinan and Taoist priest Chen to help him. He asked them to go on his behalf. He then began to cry. Taoist priest Chen immediately patted Magistrate Mummy on the shoulder and told him not to be like that. It was his duty to slay demons and eliminate evil. Jinan was surprised by his attitude. He wondered if Taoist priest Chen had a loose screw. But then he realized that he was a real eel. He would never do anything for free. In the end, he still made a very small request. He said that it would be great if Magistrate Feng could invite him to eat more roast duck. "Oh, you're so smart. I've already cooked all the ones in my hometown." Jinan grabbed Taoist priest Chen by the collar and dragged him away. He also told Magistrate Feng to be on guard. If anything happened, he should wait at Lin Lu's residence. The ghost fire might use paper ghosts to steal the bodies. At that moment, Magistrate Feng cried as if he had never cried before. Jinan and Taoist priest Chen had already left. He was probably feeling sorry for his wallet, which was likely to be empty soon. He said through tears that he would leave immediately. The scene shifted to the ghost master's house. Jinan and Taoist priest Chen were standing outside. A figure with its head bowed was clearly visible in the window. Taoist priest Chen guessed that it might be the ghostmaster. It was so late at night, and he still hadn't gone to bed. Could he be masturbating? Jinan, let's see if there are any people or ghosts in the house. He activated his spirit vision technique. His eyes turned a cold red, and he could see through the space inside the house. It's a hideous ghost. Seeing that his little brother didn't say anything, Taoist priest Chen asked him again about the situation inside. Is it difficult to deal with the evil spirits causing trouble? Just then, at the most crucial moment, our protagonist let out a huge sneeze. This caused the ghost in the room to disappear. Taoist priest Chen rushed forward and kicked the door open. They both rushed inside. They looked around but couldn't see anything. Where had the person gone? Suddenly, they heard the sound of water coming from somewhere. Jinan rubbed his arm, wondering why it was getting colder and colder. The fog seemed to have come from nowhere. The door behind them suddenly slammed shut, causing the two men, who were already confused, to jump in fright. The door behind them suddenly slammed shut, causing the two men, who were already confused, to jump in fright. When he regained his senses, he quickly ran to the door and banged on it, hitting both of his hands until they were swollen. Jinan wondered why even his iron fists, which were as big as sandbags, couldn't open this door. "Oh no, we're screwed. We're trapped, teacher." At this point, Taoist priest Chen said not to worry. "Wait for me to use this magic treasure to investigate." "Damn it, why didn't you say so earlier?" Taoist priest Chen immediately activated his Wink's magic technique, Enchantix. When he opened his eyes, he said to Jinan, "It seems that we have encountered a ghost market." Under Jinan's questioning gaze, Taoist priest Chen nodded. Jinan immediately recalled a legend recorded in the Guangping Fushu Tonggan Lu. There was a lazy man in Haihao village who lived in a simple house with 4 walls. One day, he got lost in a rock formation and saw that the formation was suddenly brightly lit, with stalls everywhere. The lazy man was immediately drawn into a casino. After winning a large sum of gold and silver overnight, he lived a life of luxury. But after being discovered by his neighbors, the lazy man was immediately arrested and charged with theft. The lazy man hurriedly explained the source of his wealth. He also led the county magistrates to the casino where he had won the money. Ironically, it was just a pile of rocks. The 2 county magistrates were like, "Are you kidding me?" and took him back to the residence to torture him for a confession. The 2 county magistrates were like, "Are you kidding me?" and took him back to the residence to torture him for a confession. Just as the lazy man was about to be sentenced, a Taoist priest stood up and explained that the lazy man had encountered a ghost market. He had used his life to gamble in the casino and won money from the ghosts. The truth was thus revealed. The lazy man was released. The rosefinch taught him that diligence makes up for clumsiness. If you don't work, you don't eat. If you don't work and want to eat, you will only eat shit. Sure enough, a few days after his release, the lazy man died in his house because his life was cut short. Jin frowned and thought, could it be that we're about to? Taoist priest Chen was drenched in sweat and listened in silence until Jinen's face lit up and he said, "We're going to be rich." Taoist priest Chen's heart sank. Damn it, he's talking nonsense. Jin continued to indulge in his dream of wealth. He talked about buying the drugstore in front of them, then about the incense carriage, and so on and so forth. Taoist priest Chen called out to his little brother. Jin turned around with a silly look on his face and his mouth still open. Taoist priest Chen took the opportunity to throw an ancient coin into his mouth. He signaled for Jin to be silent. Hold on to this ancient coin. In the ghost market, the ghosts won't be able to steal your luck. He also told Jin not to look at him, to close his eyes tightly, and to lower his head. Jin obediently closed his eyes. After a long while, feeling the sunlight shining through his skin, Jin asked Taoist priest Chen if he was done. Could he open his eyes? Jin squinted and looked around, only to see Taoist priest Chen tumbling into the ditch. He had told Jin to hold the coin tightly, but when it was his turn, he had almost lost face. As he wrung out his clothes, Jin asked, "Is this really a ghost market? It's so deserted." Taoist priest Chen was drenched. He said that perhaps the ghost master had entered the formation with them. He's disappeared. Jin sat down and slapped Taoist priest Chen on the shoulder. He looked at Taoist priest Chen's dumbfounded face and said sarcastically, "What are you doing there? Are you scared?" Embarrassed and angry, Taoist priest Chen's morale soared. He shouted that he wasn't afraid of anyone. He walked in without waiting for the male protagonist to call out to him. Jin still liked to tease him. He said, "Look at you, you've been eating too much roast duck. If you're not careful, you'll get so fat that I won't be able to pull you up again." Taoist priest Chen was so angry that he almost died. Food is the most important thing. The 2 laughing figures walked in the desolate wilderness. Suddenly, there was a thud. Something must have fallen into the water. Jin went over to take a look. It turned out to be the corpse of a dog. Taoist priest Chen denied it. That was clearly the sound of something falling into the water. That dog has clearly been dead for a long time. He looked up at the tree again. The corpse of a cat hung from a branch. A dead dog in the water, a dead cat in a tree. A great disaster was upon them. Jin's ears itched when he heard this. Was this really a great disaster? He suspected that Taoist priest Chen would not let go of the cat and dog. He had probably never seen anything bigger. Taoist priest Chen was like a drop of water that had overflowed. He almost tore his little brother to pieces in front of him. He said that Jin was a frog in a well. He didn't know anything. He was looking down on him by saying that. Jin didn't pay any attention to him. He turned around and left. He had to get out of here quickly. He didn't want to wait here to die. Taoist priest Chen was still furious. He ran after Jin, his mouth running at full speed. He really wanted Jin to explain what he had just said. Throughout the long journey, there was not a single living thing. This ghost market was too quiet. The houses were all moldy. It didn't look like anyone lived here. Taoist priest Chen insisted that living things were the key to breaking the ghost market. If they wanted to get out, they had to find them quickly. Instead of standing there mocking me, you should be looking for them. Suddenly, a voice came from afar. "Aching, come home quickly. It's going to rain soon." They both turned to look. In the misty smoke and dust, the figure of a young boy flashed past. It seemed that it was Aching, a living thing. Jin and Taoist priest Chen immediately chased after him. He disappeared into the white space. In front of them was a courtyard with its doors closed. From inside came the sound of giggling. The sound disappeared, and the last sound came from this courtyard. Within a radius of several miles, only Aching was moving. He was a living thing. They should go in and see if they could find any new clues. Jin opened the door and rushed in. Whoa, this smell is too strong. They both went in to see what kind of tricks he was playing. As they walked, raindrops fell. It was just in time. The rain was strange. It started raining only after they entered the courtyard. Damn it. As soon as Taoist priest Chen finished speaking, the rain started to pour heavily. Damn it all. Forget about that brat. We should go into the house and take shelter from the rain. They stepped into the house and looked around. Jin wondered why the food was soaked in water. It was about to turn into mud. The ghost's tastes were really strange. Just as he was about to touch it, Taoist priest Chen shouted, "Stop." He said that this was the house of the dead. One should never touch anything here. Ha 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 ha. Laughter came from behind a torn curtain. The old man Tran and Tan and also followed, their hair standing on end. A moment later, it fell silent. Tan and swiftly drew the curtain aside. With a fiery spirit, he raised his voice, "You naughty boy, how dare you be so rude and disrespectful? You little devil from the Tong Mon sect. Let me catch you and teach you how to be a proper person." The old man Tran stood still, examining closely, unsure whether it was a person or a ghost that had caused this, losing all credibility. "Come out from behind that curtain, you coward. Come out here to your father right now." Tan and flung open the cabinet doors, casually tossing aside a pair of underwear. How inappropriate. The old man Tran, holding the bagua, glanced around, then approached the table for inspection. There was a noise, and he thought the old man Tran was knocking something, but it wasn't. The sound came from the bed nearby. The two of them instantly looked at each other intently, just as lightning streaked across the sky outside. Under the water, a living corpse emerged, climbing up the bank, lively and noisily, greeting the brothers. Its mouth growled like a rabid dog. Back in the room, they flipped over the bed after hearing the noise, expecting to find something, but instead found only a Ton Kong Kok talisman, with charms and spells plastered all over the underside. There were traces of chalk, perhaps from a child. Could it be that the demonic presence in the ghost market was actually a little devil? The old man Tran also had the same thought, but why would so many water-repelling charms be used to subdue a little devil? It couldn't be that they had extra charms to spare. Furthermore, the demonic aura on these paper charms had also appeared in the prison holding Li Dai's son. Tannen was certain it was the same demonic force behind the harm. He found the culprit. This time, "You're dead meat, you bastard." Suddenly, the imprint of 5 eerie fingers appeared on the door. The two of them looked out, and right after were hands. Ghastly faces pressed against the door panels, growling insanely. The old man Tran and Tannen stood motionless, seemingly on the verge of fainting. The corpses flocked in, and at the 99th second, Tannen gripped his sword, his heart trembling. Corpses, so many corpses, what should we do? What should we do? The old man Tran pointed and said, "Water corpses, these are the water corpses of the Lasat Ba." The old man was now panicking. "Can someone please ship me some diapers? Old folks tend to have weak hearts, you know." The main character couldn't understand a thing. What the heck are water corpses? And who or what is Lasat Ba or Balasat? Although he was shaking, almost wetting his pants, seeing his young brother so clueless, the old man could only grit his teeth and explain. A woman who committed an act that tarnished her reputation, was drowned in a pig cage. If she secretly did things like this or secretly gave birth, the child would also be executed. The woman and her newborn child would die just like that, giving birth to a very heavy grudge. Over time, it would accumulate and turn into a vengeful ghost. Since they were all women, they were called Lasat Ba. To put it simply, water ghost corpses are children. Little brother, you died by drowning in a river. You were brainless and flattered by the Lasat collected in the river. Jinan was like, "Oh my god, I'm awake again. Oh my god, I'm so scared. Do you need to talk as long as a piece of paper, you old man?" Taoist priest Chen continued. Maybe these talismans were stuck on like this to suppress the son of the Lasat Ba. In other words, the ghost that killed Li Daishan was the Lasat Ba. And right now, right at this very moment, she wants to kill the two of them. Taoist priest Chen figured that the Lasat Ba had now far surpassed the ordinary Yin Sat. If she was here, the two of them would have their heads separated from their necks. Jinan smiled foolishly. Oh dear, the Lasat Ba is not here. That means the two of them have a chance to escape. Speaking of the water ghost corpses, why are there so many of them around them? Could it be a diversion? Feng Bo Do is really in danger. Rip, the ghost's hand came in. Jinan was only half conscious and hurriedly asked Taoist priest Chen how to get rid of the corpse. They're actually in the room. What do we do now? What do I do now? After searching for a while, Taoist priest Chen grinned. His tone was 10 times more confident as he spread out the 6 talismans in his hand. He said in a loud voice, "These water ghost corpses are probably the key for the two of us to leave the ghost market. We have to break them quickly to save Feng Bo Do. Otherwise, no one will be able to protect him from being eaten by roast duck." Jinan didn't believe him. He had a good heart, but his mouth was full of nonsense. He couldn't help but tell Taoist priest Chen to be less smug. "There are more corpse ghosts outside than hairs on your head. I've lived for 25 years, and I've never seen a case as ridiculous as this." After a while, they all crawled into the house. It was disgusting. Taoist priest Chen jumped up and threw the talismans like darts, sticking them firmly to the heads of the corpses. And just like that, his talismans made them stand still. Then he ran outside, and quickly stuck talismans on the heads of the corpse ghosts in front of him. Jin cheered and told him to use the talismans to kill them all. He looked down at his treasure bag. Oh, no, little brother. I've used them all up. Seeing him standing there frozen while the corpses were charging at them like mad, Jin rushed forward and cut off its head. We're out of talismans. What are we going to do now? The old man Tran still had some sticky rice, but he must think of another plan, for this small amount would not last long. The number of corpses was too many. Fighting them one by one would likely exhaust them to death, unless there was a way to defeat them all at once. He contemplated for a while, deciding it was worth a try. Soon after, he began cultivating the blood-freezing strike technique. Explode. Blow up the corpses for me. He knelt down and used his spiritual energy to sense that he had just accumulated 1258 more yin virtues. The old man Tran quickly supported him, worried that the young brother had overexerted himself, but received the reply, I'm fine. The rain had stopped, the sunset looked beautiful. The demonic formation had been resolved. Back in the original room, the old and young, their killing intent reaching the heavens, cheered in unison, clapping. Finally, we made it out. Behind them appeared a coffin. What the hell is this? More ghostly deceptions? Come out. Is there another corpse inside this coffin? Tan and the old man Tran raised their hands in defense. At this point, they weren't afraid of any ancestor of the corpses. They directly opened the lid to find a monk chewing on a chicken leg. Playing tricks, huh? The young man and old Tran immediately gave the monk a good beating. That's the price for impersonating deities and ghosts. A guy like you. They had just killed over 800, their blood boiling, when suddenly they heard this body screaming in pain. Help! Evil demons are killing people. Wait a minute, who's the evil demon, you old stinky monk? The three of them sat around the fire. It turned out to be a misunderstanding. Taoist priest Chen said that they had been sent by Feng Bo Do to investigate the disappearance of Yin Xiao. He asked the Grand Master who he was. By now, the monk's face was bruised and his eyes were blackened from the beating he had received from the male lead. Blood was gushing out of his nose, making him look extremely comical. He said that he was an exorcist arranged by the monk. Jin immediately asked why he, as an exorcist, had gotten into a coffin for no reason. The exorcist pondered for a moment. He didn't know what had happened either. He had been eating chicken when he suddenly felt a chill. He quickly crawled onto the bed to keep warm, but then his vision went black. He couldn't see anything. When he woke up, he saw everyone else. Jin still doubted his words. How is it possible that you were stuffed in a coffin for so long and you're still breathing? You're lying through your teeth, old man. Taoist priest Chen interrupted him. We should go back to the Lam family to save Feng Bo Do. If we delay any longer, he might encounter the Lasat Ba. This time next year will be the anniversary of his death. As if remembering an urgent task that needed to be done, Jin stopped questioning the exorcist and left the house. He couldn't help but look back at him. His eyes were deep and unfathomable. The moon hung high in the sky as the two of them walked quickly towards the Lam family's house. There was the sound of footsteps. Jin turned to ask Taoist priest Chen if he had heard anything. Taoist priest Chen also stopped to listen. I don't see anything. This kid is such a coward. He said that it was curfew time. There can't be anyone unless it's not a human. Before he could finish his sentence, Jin interrupted him. You're being superstitious too. Wasn't it scary enough just now? My heart is about to burst. Taoist priest Chen grimaced. Don't be suspicious. If we're late, we'll only be able to clean up Feng Bo Do's body. Jin ran after him, calling out to Taoist priest Chen to wait for him. He didn't realize that he had just left. Just then, a group of soldiers marched towards the end of the alley. They were holding spears and halberds, looking extremely sinister. At the Lam family's house, next to the coffin, Feng Zak Yuip was kneeling on the ground, his hands clutching his neck. His eyes were bloodshot from being strangled. A ghostly hand was choking him. Jin and Taoist priest Chen had just arrived. Jin also saw that his head was covered in grass. To be more precise, it was the hair of the Lasat Ba. Fortunately, they had arrived just in time. Taoist priest Chen told Jin to hold him down while he poured him some Tam Duong wine. To see if he could drive out the hairy thing, Jin punched Feng Bo Do in the stomach without saying a word. It was such a thunderous punch that it made him vomit up all the food he had just eaten. Taoist priest Chen was stunned for 5 seconds. As if he was both hitting and rubbing him, the male lead asked him if he was feeling better. Looking at the expression on his face, it seemed like he was about to choke to death. He really had to use his secret technique. Great strength produces miraculous results. He saw that the other person was still hunched over and couldn't stand up, so he casually told Feng Bo Do not to be so polite. You're killing me, you're killing me. He went from joking to being on guard. Something was wrong. He immediately grabbed Feng Bo Do's hand and pulled him back. At the same time, the Lasat Ba appeared, surprising all three of them. Suddenly, an eerie sound pierced through the air. The thing that appeared in front of them frightened all three of them. Taoist priest Chen felt that the Lasat Ba wanted to kill them. Then Jin and thought that this woman was really difficult to deal with. Feng Bo Do was too embarrassed to find a place to rest after being beaten up just now. But before he could, a strange figure appeared from above and descended towards the coffin. The old man Tran immediately took the sword from Tanan's hand. Let me handle this. Julian summoned a layer of energy surrounding and protecting the three of them from the relentless attacks of Lasat Ba. Tanan was impressed, praising the old man's divine skills. With this, the hair can't attack us anymore. Before they knew what to do next, a clump of hair suddenly appeared on Tanan's shoulder. From it emerged a hideous ghost. Before Tanan could react, it licked its long, slobbery tongue at him, but he swiftly grabbed its mouth and flung it down, furiously stomping it like husking rice. This pig made me lose a few years of my life with that fright. But suddenly the hair from the monster's body transformed into strands binding Tanan's whole body. He felt uneasy, immobilized. Was it trying to possess his body? Seeing this, the old man Tran seemed to understand and prepared to throw a talisman at him. At that moment, Tanan also used the 13th level of the blood-freezing strike, unleashing a fierce aura that blew the hair away. The clump of hair fled half dead. Within the protective layer, it seemed Tanan was now safe. He couldn't believe that thing survived his attack. The old man Tran said he had a solution. Perhaps we can save ourselves. The male lead was overjoyed and asked if it was a way for them to escape. Cut off the Lasat Ba's tail? Taoist priest Chen was having a hard time fighting, and then he met this god Tanan. He was so angry that he shouted that what he was talking about was not a miracle. He told him to go outside and turn over the white coffin. Let the fierce master in the coffin deal with the Lasat Ba. By this time, the protective layer was not as strong as before. It gradually cracked, making Taoist priest Chen very nervous. He told Tanan to hurry up. He sat inside and calculated the distance. It was a bit far. Although Taoist priest Chen was not very reliable, there was no better way now. He decided to trust him. He drew his sword and ran towards the white coffin in front of him. But then the demon wrapped its body around him. Its disgusting long tongue caught him. Tanan was tied up by it, and he was still some distance from the white coffin. It seemed that things were not going well. Suddenly, a group of soldiers appeared from outside. They were armed with spears and charged forward, making the demon on Tanan very worried. It immediately left him and charged towards the soldiers, facing their spears head-on. The soldiers were very skilled. They stabbed the demon with their spears and cut it in half. The demon was completely separated from Tanan. After that attack, he was exhausted. He sat in front of the white coffin, feeling that what had just happened was unexpected. He thought that he would be killed and become food for these hairy things. But then it disappeared without a trace. Taoist priest Chen patted him on the shoulder and said that the fierce master in the white coffin had taken a fancy to him. He couldn't bear to let him die, so he sent the soldiers to help him. What nonsense was this old man talking about? Was his brain fried? What did he mean by sending soldiers? The old man hesitated and said that he had been held back just now and could not come to his aid. Seeing that he was about to die, his heart ached and tears streamed down his face. Suddenly, a group of elite soldiers descended from the sky. The Lasat Ba's soul disappeared with them. He clapped his hands on Tanan's body and said that he guessed that the master of this white coffin must have been taken away by the soldiers. The male lead couldn't understand a word he said. His body was aching, but this old man kept touching him. He was in so much pain that he was about to die. He hurriedly got up. Tanan wondered what was going on. Wasn't the white coffin still here? Besides, how did Taoist priest Chen know that the soldiers were here to welcome her and not to arrest her? Also, why was the coffin lid so easy to open? There were only clothes inside. Where was the body? Could it be that his face was so evil that he dared to guess that the naked body had run away? He immediately received a knock on the head from Taoist priest Chen. The old man said that this master was very fierce, but he had a hard life and had never met anyone before. Only he could control her. He then asked him if he could marry her. Tanan struggled at this point. He apologized for blaming Taoist priest Chen and said that he must have lost his mind to say something so inhumane. As dawn broke, the mummy behind them spoke up. Poor Feng Bo Do, his old wounds had not yet healed, and now he had new ones. On top of that, he had almost been forgotten by the other two. What else could he do but cry? Feng Bo Do's voice trembled. At that time, the evil spirit had wrapped itself around his body. He felt like he was suffocating. He could not breathe normally. Could it be that Li Dai-sun had been killed by it? Taoist priest Chen nodded in agreement. The Lasat Ba of the Niche Tui Dao. The culprit was a demon, not a human. Speaking of which, how could Feng Bo-do hand over the case? He tried to sit up, but he still groaned. He just needed to confirm the identity of the culprit. Why are you acting so weak, brother? If you fall flat on your face, won't you lose face? Tan and Taoist priest Chen were suspicious. They didn't think that Lao Feng was dead yet. He could still be saved. They were also very hungry, so they decided to go out for breakfast and leave Lao Feng lying on the ground, wrapped in bandages. He lay there on the ground, crying his eyes out. When they arrived at the restaurant in the town, it was crowded with people. It was also a gathering place for gossipers. A man shouted and asked everyone if they had heard the news that the post station in the west of the city was haunted. Oh my God! Oh my God! Another man was curious, so he continued to explain that every night, they could hear the cries of a man and a child, and there was rotten meat and hair falling from the roof. After that, there were ghosts in the village. An unmarried woman gave birth to a child and was punished by the clan. They took her and her child and drowned them in a pigsty. It was a tragedy. It was said that the land belonged to the Shenjia village, which had been flooded and killed everyone in the village. After the water receded, it was built into a post station. Every time they passed by, they couldn't help but feel a chill down their spines. Tan sat there listening to the gossiping townsfolk. Then, an official came over. He asked Tan to confirm his identity. When he received confirmation from the idol, he was overjoyed. He said that he had finally found him and that he had gone to the inn where he had checked out. Then he handed him a huge package and said that Feng Darren had ordered him to give it to him. Tan's face changed immediately. He thought to himself, hadn't he already rewarded him with 300 taels of gold? What else was he going to give him? Taoist priest Chen was a miser. He immediately grabbed the package. He couldn't wait to open it and see how many roast ducks were inside. Oh my God, he was a real foodie. He opened the first layer, then the second layer. Taoist priest Chen kept laughing and opening the layers of cloth. Damn, who packed this? It's taking me forever to open it. At the nth layer, Taoist priest Chen couldn't keep calm anymore. He was so angry that he grabbed the package. With 3 heads and 6 arms, he tore the cloth apart. Tan gasped. Taoist priest Chen looked disappointed. He thought it was something big. What was the point of hiding it like that? It turned out that there was only a saber and 2 books inside. Tan picked up the saber and examined it carefully. The official immediately replied that Feng Darren said that he had broken his saber while solving the case. So he gave him this tiger-killing saber. Taoist priest Chen interjected. His mouth was so poisonous. He added more salt and vinegar. He immediately said that the name of this tiger-killing saber sounded unlucky. The official then fell silent under Tan's suspicious gaze. He then said that the saber was a bit strange. Whoever used it would either die or disappear. But Feng Bo-do said that he could control this saber. He recalled the image of Feng Bo-do's battered body and his constant affirmation that Tan was tough. He had personally tested it. Damn, was he kidding? Lao Feng was trying to kill me. The official quickly defended his master. He said that even if he had 10 lives, he would never dare to kill the male lead. Speaking of which, Feng Darren had given him 2 martial arts manuals. He didn't pay much attention to them. He was paying attention to something else. Taoist priest Chen was now holding the 2 manuals and examining them. Let's see. These 2 are called the Black Mountain Manual and the Epitaph Manual. They cleanse the body and cultivate the spirit. They are the strongest hard Qigong manuals. They are very good. They are not the kind of knockoffs that are sold in the Dongzhan market. Speaking of which, when Tan heard this, he immediately rushed over and snatched the 2 books back. He kept saying that they were his. The official immediately retreated and returned to his mission. Before he and Taoist priest Chen could finish speaking, he had disappeared. Tan turned around and looked at. He saw a familiar figure that he had met before. What was she doing here? In a sunny and windy manner, amidst a rustling bamboo forest, Tan sat in meditation. He looked very cool. Any girl who came here would definitely lose her way. She would probably die on the spot from blood loss. He was concentrating when he heard a deep voice calling from outside the gate. The voice was so loud that the male lead almost had an out-of-body experience. It was none other than the goat. Damn, it was so loud that it deafened him. He quickly grabbed the biggest apple and opened the gate. He conveniently used the apple to lure the greedy goat in front of him. He couldn't help but wonder if the goat was really that strong. Its cry was so loud that it didn't know what level it had reached. He then asked Taoist priest Chen why he had taken so long. He had gone to order some goat meat at the inn, but he hadn't gotten any water. He turned to look at Taoist priest Chen. Oh my God, his face was swollen. He almost didn't recognize him as the venerable Taoist priest who exorcised demons. Taoist priest Chen held the goat's leash tightly and tried to call out to the sworn brother in front of him, but he was pierced by him and revealed too much of the secret. He was suffering retribution for this. Damn, that beggar. I'm in such a sorry state because of the male lead's precious goat. He said that when he passed by the goat meat shop earlier, the owner happened to be working. As a result, the goat suddenly went berserk and charged at the owner, trying to gore him several times. It didn't even spare him. It kicked him with its hind legs, sending him flying several hundred miles away. Then it dragged him along the road for 2 hours for no reason at all. Tannen was shocked. Had it mutated from eating too much tonic? He looked at the goat again and it seemed to be a bit bigger than before. Tannen stood up and said to Taoist priest Chen with a sense of responsibility, "Tell me what you want now and I'll grant it." As I said, this old man is a foodie. And he was still angry with this strange goat, so he didn't think much about it and chose goat hot pot. Then what was bound to happen happened. The goat immediately charged at him and beat him up. He shouted angrily, "You stupid, wretched goat. If I don't beat you until your teeth fall out, I'm not the famous Taoist priest Chen." Tannen watched the show and had nothing to say about this ridiculous situation. They arrived at the inn at noon. The sun was scorching hot. Taoist priest Chen kept broadcasting. He turned himself into a real rice-powered advertising tool. Speaking of hot pot, one must eat at the Western City's beautiful goat restaurant. The goat meat is absolutely fresh. Standing in front of the goat meat restaurant, Tannen couldn't help but marvel at its grandeur. He couldn't help but praise the beautiful structure of the restaurant. But it was so crowded. Maybe they could get something to eat if they went to another restaurant. However, Taoist priest Chen had a deep obsession with this goat meat restaurant. How could he agree to leave? It was not easy to get invited to a meal. It would be a waste of heaven's gifts to leave so easily. The moon hung high in the sky. They had waited from morning till night but still had nothing to eat. Taoist priest Chen and Tannen were now like ghosts wandering in front of the restaurant. He stood up abruptly. "No, we can't wait any longer. If we push it too far, it will be too late. The curfew is about to start, damn it." Tannen was so hungry that he looked at Taoist priest Chen in a daze. Suddenly, someone called out, "Young Master Tannen." He turned around. "Who is it? Who is calling me? I'm starving to death and you're making me turn around. Do you know how much energy that takes?" It turned out to be the acquaintance he had met at the inn yesterday. He was dressed in an imperial robe and looked very noble. He said that it was indeed young Master Tannen. Then he invited the two of them. If they didn't mind, they could join him at his table. Tannen thought about it and finally sat down with Taoist priest Chen. The goat hot pot was steaming hot and fragrant. Tannen started a conversation and found out that the young master in the bright yellow robe was called Y Van. It was really a coincidence to meet here. Then he turned to look at the man opposite him and said, "Chi Ba is also here. That's great." Taoist priest Chen also started a conversation. "Not bad, not bad. We were worried about not having a place to stay. The saints really do treat the foolish well. The blind cat has caught a fried fish. Otherwise, we would have starved to death tonight." Fortunately, young Master Y Van had invited them. Taoist priest Chen didn't even bother to be polite anymore. It was really embarrassing. Tannen suddenly became serious again. He told Y Van about the coffin temple at the foot of the mountain. He still remembered that night when he fell down the slope and met Y Van's carriage. It had been so long since then. He didn't expect Y Van to still be in White Bone County. Y Van smiled slightly and said that they had met yesterday. The conversation was interrupted when Taoist priest Chen kept picking up food. He naturally invited everyone to eat. "Come on, eat. Don't be polite with me. If you don't eat this, I won't be polite." "Oh my God, is there a hole somewhere? Let me stuff him in there. Where is the face and morale of a cultivator?" Tannen smiled bitterly in his heart, and his smile became distorted. "Damn it, isn't this embarrassing?" The atmosphere at the table was awkward for a few seconds. Then Y Van broke the silence. He praised Tannen for constantly solving strange cases, which made the people of the world admire him. Who wouldn't be happy to be praised? Our male lead's nostrils flared a little. He looked at Taoist priest Chen and asked, "Is the Taoist priest next to Tannen the expert who presided over the funeral for the Lin family?" Taoist priest Chen immediately turned on his pretentious mode. He put down his bowl and chopsticks and put on a serious face. He wanted to confirm Y Van's words. Then he started to transform into a professional fortune teller. He took the opportunity to spout out a series of services that he was offering. He said that he could tell fortunes, read horoscopes, and analyze bones and faces. He could do it all with one hand. He could tell the fortune of anyone, young or old. He said that if everyone was an acquaintance, he would give a 20% discount per person. He kindly told Y Van not to miss this great opportunity to get his fortune told. Tannen sat there listening, not knowing where to hide his face. Y Van smiled and said that he would let him read his face and tell his fortune, despite Tannen's attempts to stop him. In order not to affect himself, Taoist priest Chen was still stubborn and insisted on doing it. He told Tan and to rest assured and then turned to Wei Van and uttered a long string of nonsense. Then he looked at Wei Van and said that young Master Wei Van had a golden forehead and a full lower jaw. He would definitely not have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of his life. He was a capable person. Then he slapped the table, making Tannen jump in his seat. He continued to talk nonsense, saying that he had discovered a peach blossom in Wei Van's marriage palace. It seemed that Wei Van would soon meet the love of his life. He had said all the good things. He ended with a mysterious look, as if he was about to say something more, but he was immediately interrupted by our male lead. Seeing Tannen coughing, he asked him what was wrong with his throat today. Was it because he had eaten too much goat meat? Was there goat hair stuck in his throat? Oh, how could he say that without shame? Who was the one who had started eating as soon as he sat down, not leaving a single piece for others? Tannen was so angry that he hated himself for not being able to stuff this old man into a hole somewhere, so that he would not have the chance to lay any more eggs. He grabbed a piece of hot goat tripe and stuffed it into his mouth. He asked him if this was the goat hair that Tannen had just coughed up. Then he frowned and said, "How can you lie to others like this, old man? Your actions never make me feel at ease." After thinking about it, he turned around and said to Wei Van with a wry smile, "You should eat quickly too, or you'll be hungry again tonight." Despite the fact that Taoist priest Chen had temporarily lost consciousness, the goat hot pot dinner ended in a very unstable manner. Taoist priest Chen picked his teeth with a toothpick and couldn't help but praise Wei Van, saying that he was a good person. He was much more generous than Constable Feng. The food at the temple was not delicious. His face was full of satisfaction. He was immediately hit on the head by Tannen. "Wake up, my friend. No one can save you if you don't." Taoist priest Chen still asked why he had hit him. Oh, he was wrong and still had the nerve to talk back. Tannen was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. When you go out into society and do business, if you take risks, you will eat more. If you don't take risks, you will eat less. But this old man ate more than everyone else. Speaking of which, the old man should pretend less. His eyes were still very clear. Could he not see that Wei Van was a woman disguised as a man? He had eaten 3 plates of goat meat all by himself. He still smelled like urine. The old man was pretending to be blind and deaf. Didn't he see that the master and servants' faces were darker than the bottom of a pot? I must say that our male lead is not to be trifled with. When he gets angry, don't ask who his father is. Taoist priest Chen became more serious and clicked his tongue. He said that Tannen should not look at him like that. He had not even said the really harsh words yet. He was already trying to soften the blow as much as possible. Then Taoist priest Chen added that Wei Van's forehead was very dark, which proved that her parents had died a very unjust death. Her children's palace also had a black aura. He thought that the death of her parents was more or less related to her. Tannen thought to himself that it was possible that she had killed her mother. Taoist priest Chen continued, "Perhaps she is a lone star that kills people. She was born to harm people. Or perhaps her parents died saving her." Tannen was lost in thought. It seemed that everyone he met in this inn was unusual. Taoist priest Chen immediately put his arm around Tannen's shoulder and interrupted his train of thought. He started talking nonsense again. He said that Tannen was so concerned about Miss Wei Van. Could it be that he had taken a fancy to her? Then he mentioned the owner of the white coffin. He said that the owner was also waiting for Tannen to return. "My ancestor, are you itching? Or have you eaten too much goat meat and become delirious?" The male lead's face turned red with anger. He was furious. Didn't the old man see what the situation was? Was this the time to talk about love? Then Taoist priest Chen looked at Tannen with undisguised admiration in his eyes. He said that Tannen had both love and money, while he was unlucky in love and poor. The older he got, the lonelier he became. Tannen felt like he was going to catch a cold just looking at him. What did he want to do? In a brothel, a female figure was dancing on the stage. There were many men around her. They had left their wives and children to come here and hug the women. They would be dead meat when they got home. Tannen had been dragged here by Taoist priest Chen. He was also drunk and mumbled that even though he was a Taoist priest, he was still a human being. He still had joy, anger, love, hate, greed, excitement, and stupidity. Moreover, he had been injured by Tannen's divine goat. Therefore, the women here were the best medicine. They could heal his wounds and nourish his body. Tannen snorted coldly. How dare this old lecher preach to him? He looked around and saw that monk Puji was holding a chicken leg and flirting with a young woman. How disgusting. Were the monks and Taoist priests here all so wild? They must be desperate for women. Suddenly, someone called out to him. Tannen turned around and saw a man with messy hair like a bird's nest. He quickly introduced himself as Constable Feng's Yamen runner. He had given Tannen the saber a few days ago. He also said that it was a coincidence to meet Tannen here. Tannen smiled wryly and nodded at the yamen runner. Today was really embarrassing. He had lost all face. He had gone to a brothel and met half of his acquaintances. He hadn't even had a chance to get started yet, but he had already gotten into trouble. Oh my god. The brothel was still bustling. The yamen runner squeezed in and sat at their table as if he were a fly. Then he said, out of nowhere, that Tannen was still alive and well. Constable Feng was right. Only young Master Tannen could control the green tiger saber. It was amazing. Taoist priest Chen, with his foul mouth, spoke up again. He looked at the yamen runner and said that he saw a black thread in his eyes. It was a symbol of a deadly collision. The yamen runner was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. He stammered and asked if he was about to encounter evil spirits. Taoist priest Chen waved his hand and said that it was even more dangerous than evil spirits. Outsiders could see through his tricks. Of course. This slippery old fox from the county had probably taken a lot of money from those rich men. And yet, the old man had succeeded in making the yamen runner cry and beg him for help. Tannen and Taoist priest Chen suddenly turned to look at him with a very serious expression. They acted so well that if the person opposite them didn't get scared shitless, it would be a waste of effort. They asked him if he had met anyone or seen anything strange. A moment later, they received an answer that was like a slap in the face. It hit them right in the face. He said that in the past 2 days, the strangest thing he had encountered was the old man and Tannen. Oh my god. Was he tired of living? He had completely ruined the reputation of those who provided exorcism and ghost-busting services. He racked his brains. In the past few days, he had gone to the yamen, then home, then back to the yamen. Then he had gone to see Sak Ha. Then he paused for about 2 seconds. Tannen asked curiously who Sak Ha was. He saw that the yamen runner's face was red. He was obviously embarrassed. He said that Sak Ha was a singing girl in this brothel. Her beauty was such that everyone who saw her loved her. The flowers bloomed when they saw her. He had come here today to see her. There was a catch here. Tannen immediately turned around and said that he also had a friend who wanted to meet Miss Sak Ha. But in fact, he didn't have any friends at all. He saw that they were all in the same boat and had met by chance. The yamen runner happily agreed. Suddenly, a scream rang out. A barefoot prostitute ran over, half dead, announcing that there had been a murder. She shouted for someone to come to Sak Ha's room quickly, saying that something had happened there. Who would dare say that Tannen was not the messenger of death? I would like to ask the production team to please slap me in the face so that I can wake up. Back at the brothel, the 3 of them, Taoist priest Chen, Tannen, and the yamen runner, all turned around at the same time. They immediately got up and ran straight to Sak Ha's room. When they got there, they saw a wilted flower pot. Sak Ha's hair was disheveled and she kept mumbling the word berry. She no longer looked like a beautiful flower. Her eyes glanced at the body under the bed. He had died sitting up. His body was covered in black clouds. He looked like a puppet. The yamen runner called out to Sak Ha. He seemed very worried. He saw the body lying on the floor. This was the murder that the woman had just reported. His Sak Ha was not in danger. Taoist priest Chen stepped forward to examine him. He immediately took out a talisman. He cast a spell and the talisman flew over and landed on the corpse's forehead. Taoist priest Chen pondered. He had been tricked. He had been made into a funerary object. The yin energy in his body had flared up and that was why he had become like this. Tannen asked if there was any way to save him. It was obvious at first glance that he could not be saved. Taoist priest Chen continued to explain that once he had been made into a funerary object, his body would no longer have a soul. He could only move like a normal person by relying on a surge of yin energy. Sak Ha sat on the bed, trembling. She had already gone mad and was constantly mumbling. He wants to be buried. He wants to bury that thing. What is that thing, ma'am? Please tell us, the yamen runner said as he approached. He wanted to know if Sak Ha was hurt. What had happened to his goddess that had made her lose her mind? Just as the yamen runner was about to reach out and comfort the beauty, Sak Ha glared at him and burned his face. She pushed him away with both hands without hesitation. He accidentally knocked over the beauty's flower pot, causing it to shatter. The yamen runner was in pain. He collapsed, but he didn't dare say anything. He obediently crawled back to Sak Ha. He kept calling her to wake up and recognize her beloved. Tannen noticed the sound of the flower pot breaking. He discovered that there were many dead flowers in this brothel. He was about to reach out and touch one of them when Taoist priest Chen stopped him. Curiosity often leads to an early grave, my boy, he said gently. It is said among the people that the beauty Tiu can absorb yin energy. Perhaps this pot of beauty Tiu had absorbed too much yin energy from men, which led to it withering and dying. Speaking of which, outside the brothel, Taoist priest Chen clicked his tongue at the Yamen runner's question about what his attitude meant. He sighed. So many beauty to you had withered and died, which proved that there must be a ghost here. The brothel was now full of ghostly energy. Tan thought to himself that if there were really so many ghosts here, wouldn't he have another chance to do a good deed and earn some money? Oh, this time he would be rich. There was the sound of footsteps approaching. The two of them immediately looked towards the door. It was the old monk who had arranged it. He poked his bald head out and asked if everyone was here. Tannen had punched him in both eyes last time, causing them to swell up like beans. And yet, he was still shamelessly walking around the brothel, gnawing on a chicken leg. Did he think he had lived too long? Noticing the sharp gaze that was pointed at him, he quickly explained that he had seen yin energy outside and had come in to take a look. It turned out that someone had really died. Taoist priest Chen was suspicious. Yin energy? He immediately ran outside. Tannen followed him closely, not forgetting to tell the Yamen runner to stay where he was. If he wandered around, next year would be the anniversary of his death. Just keep an eye on your girl. The Yamen runner made a foolish face when he heard this. What's a girl? It's funny to hear you say girl. Taoist priest Chen stopped and looked around the strange space. A hand reached out and gently placed itself on his shoulder. Damn it, I'm old. Don't do anything so affectionate. I don't need it. The voice that spoke was Tan An's. He asked Taoist priest Chen what he was looking at. He said that he had called him like a ferryman, but he had ignored him. When he realized that it was his close friend, he asked him if he knew about corpse oil. Judging by his foolish face, he probably didn't know anything about it. He bent down and searched through his bag of treasures. He found it, a blue bottle containing corpse oil. Tannen accused him of using people to make oil, calling him a wicked and immoral man. Taoist priest Chen opened his eyes wide like a hawk and said, "Make oil, you fool? This is what I scraped off a body that didn't rot. It's the highest quality. It's 5-star quality. And when you use it, you only need a tiny bit. Apply it to your forehead, and don't waste it. Apply it directly to both shoulders. The effect is amazing. It can temporarily extinguish the 3 yang fires of a person, fascinating the eyes of the ghosts. In short, you can see ghosts, but ghosts cannot see you." Tannen opened his eyes wide. Around him, the green energy was swirling around him in a circle. Damn it, did I get oil in my eyes? Why are they so spicy? Are you trying to blind me? Taoist priest Chen said. This yin energy all comes from the funerary objects. There are so many people in Zhonghuyan who have been made into funerary objects. Speaking of which, those who are lustful and debauched will become ghosts after they die. They still sneak into brothels. There's a reason for that. They are attracted to the beauty to you. The yin energy will be controlled by evil spirits. Taoist priest Chen guessed that something big was going to happen when Zhonghuyan came here. Tannen wondered if it had anything to do with the brothel temple fair. He turned to Taoist priest Chen and asked, other than using corpse oil, is there any other way to see so much yin energy? He said that there was a way, but only those who had cultivated to the highest level could do it. Tannen's face fell. This was not good. He immediately ran off, leaving Taoist priest Chen to chase after him, his pants almost falling down. He called out until his voice was hoarse. Tannen wondered what on earth was in Taoist priest Chen's bag. Looking at the deflated bag, he kept reaching into it and pulling out all sorts of treasures. Could it be a 4-dimensional space? He rummaged around for a while and then said, of course, it contains some things that science cannot explain. That's like saying nothing. Who doesn't know that, old man? Returning to the brothel. In the room, Sak Ha was still huddled up. Tannen walked over and kept calling out, Your Excellency, wake up. He had fallen asleep as if nothing had happened. When he opened his eyes, he was confused and stammered, Did I fall asleep? How could you fall asleep like that? Tannen's face was darker than a pot. He had been sleeping right next to him. This Yamen runner is really something. I told you to watch him, but you fell asleep, damn it. Fortunately, the body is still here. Where did that monk go? What kind of person is he? He can actually see yin energy. Suddenly, Taoist priest Chen stared at the corpse. That's not right. The yin energy on this corpse has almost been sucked out. Tannen wondered if it was as Taoist priest Chen had said, that the beauty to you would suck out the yin energy. It's normal for the yin energy on the corpse to gradually disappear. I'll still have the Yamen runner take this corpse back to the Yamen. He turned to say something. He was immediately put off by the scene of the man and Sak Ha making out. He held her hands and feet and said, Sak Ha, don't be afraid. Wait for me to take the body back to the Yamen, and I'll come back to see you right away. Taoist priest Chen was speechless for a moment. This situation is really chaotic. If you can still be so calm, then I'll have to bow down to you. Just then, the Yamen runner said goodbye and dragged the corpse away with difficulty. He was gritting his teeth as he dragged the corpse back to the Yamen. At this moment, Taoist priest Chen said, He's gone. Tannen just said, oh. It seemed that the target he needed to focus on was the naked woman on the bed. Sak Ha lowered her head at this moment. Then she looked up at the sky. Her face became strange. Her eyes were sunken, and one side of her face was decomposed, revealing her jawbone. Black veins were also all over her body. She looked just like the corpse that the Yamen runner had just taken away. If the man had seen Sak Ha like this, he would never have dared to come to the brothel again. The night sky was deserted. It was the 4th watch of the night. The weather was cold. In front of the temple fair, 2 men were walking in the dark. The thin one walked in front, and the fat one followed behind. They looked like they were about to do something shady. Suddenly, the one behind called out to the one in front. He immediately received a gesture to be quiet. Wai scolded the fat man for forgetting what he had said. Before they left, he had told him very clearly that there were many taboos when walking around at night. No red, no loud voices, and no turning around. The fat man still remembered, but his brain was full of fat, so his mouth was still chattering loudly. He could only sigh helplessly and say, "Fatty, what's the matter? Speak up quickly. There's a lot to do at home." The fat man immediately said that in front of them was the Temple of Literature and Martial Arts. He had heard that at midnight, the leaves of the sacred tree would turn into gold coins. He coaxed the thin man to go and have a look. A sound came from behind them. The thin man immediately turned his head to look in the direction of the sound. The fat man reminded him not to keep turning his head like that. He also said that it was already the curfew hour. What on earth is that sound? The thin man put on the air of a senior. He wore a hat on his head and slippers on his feet. He did not hesitate to reassure his companion. "Don't be afraid. There are 2 of us here. Let's go and see what the noise is." No sooner said than done. The 2 men went behind the temple. From the light of the lantern, they saw a figure in the corner digging at the dirt and rocks. The thin man asked what the person was doing. The woman who was digging stopped when she heard this. Then she twisted her head around to the back. Her mouth made some creepy noises. Her face, her pitch black eyes and 2 mouths with white teeth were deeply etched into the hearts of the 2 men who stood there in shock. Returning to Tannen and Taoist priest Chen, the old and the young walked side by side under the dim moonlight, which was gradually being covered by dark clouds. The male lead yawned as he walked. It seemed that a swarm of flies was about to fly straight into his mouth. He asked Taoist priest Chen why he wanted to go to the brothel again. He didn't even look at his own physical condition. He should be resting and regaining his strength. He was a human, not a cow or a buffalo. It wouldn't be too late to fight another day. Taoist priest Chen was silent. Then he spread out a few talismans covered with intricate designs of dragons, snakes, and clouds. He proudly said that he had worked hard to draw these talismans. He had drawn so many talismans in just one night to test if they could prevent the spread of yin energy. He had some left over, so he took them to the temple fair to sell for a small profit. Tan and snatched one of them. "Does this thing work?" He was holding Taoist priest Chen's most treasured talisman, the talisman that suppressed yin energy. It was called the 6 Ding 6 Jia talisman. In times of danger, it could invite 12 gods to possess the person. The paper talisman was even more powerful. The power to invite gods would also be stronger. Tan and held the talisman in his hand and used his life energy technique. He discovered that this talisman really did have spiritual energy. If he used his yin virtue to consecrate this talisman, he could use it to save his life if he happened to be at a disadvantage during a fight. It was worth mentioning again. This temple fair always made him feel uneasy. "Help! There's a ghost! Help!" A cry for help suddenly rang out. The 2 men immediately looked in the direction of the sound. At the same time, the fat and thin men had also recovered from the shock of their lives. "Holy shit! We've seen a ghost. It's blinding our eyes." They ran away as fast as they could. At this moment, Tannen and Taoist priest Chen seemed to have arrived. He saw the 2 men running past without saying anything. He grabbed the thin man by the collar and looked at him. He cleared his throat and asked him where he was going and what had happened. The man immediately started to cry. He sobbed and said that there was a ghost in the alley ahead. The fat man also ran over at this moment. The 2 men begged for help. Tannen pulled out his saber and gave it to Feng Bo-do. Taoist priest Chen also lit a lamp. After walking for a while, they still didn't see any female ghost. Taoist priest Chen pointed at a pile of dirt and rocks that was unusually high. "What is this?" Tannen dug it out and asked, "What is this?" After the dirt and rocks were removed, a shovel was revealed. Behind the shovel was gunpowder. A pile of gunpowder had been buried. What did this person mean by burying so much gunpowder? Was he planning to blow up the temple? Taoist priest Chen said that it was not gunpowder that had been buried. His meaning was clear. There was yin energy on the gunpowder, just like the funeral objects in the brothel. And hadn't the body already been dragged away by the yamen runner? Moreover, the funeral objects were clearly male. While the two men who had run away had said that they had encountered a female ghost here, they looked at each other in confusion. Oh my god, it's Sak Ha, the yamen runner's lover who he never married. They ran off in a hurry, not forgetting to tell Taoist priest Chen to go and find Sak Ha. Tan and himself would run back and report to Feng Bo-do. He would send people to search the entire county. This was a big mess. There must be more gunpowder somewhere else. He ran to the county office as fast as he could. Tan was so out of breath that he could barely speak. He saw that the gate of the yamen was wide open. He also saw that Feng Bo-do was already there, beckoning him to come in quickly. He said that the county magistrate had been waiting for him for a long time. Tan thought about it, but still followed Feng Bo-do into the office. When they arrived, he respectfully reported to the old magistrate, "Young Master Tan has arrived." The old magistrate looked up and then down, and then invited him to sit down. The room was filled with a strange smell. Tan said nothing, and simply sat down on the chair as he had been instructed. Was this smell coming from the county magistrate? A man, and an old man at that, was wearing shit and piss on his body? And it was the same pink powder as Hong Wei. Could it be that the old man had finally come out as gay now that he had grandchildren? He suddenly remembered that he hadn't seen Lin Van for a long time, and he also remembered that he had once given her a box of powder. The officials suddenly spoke up. The identity of the body that had been brought back from the brothel had been clarified. He was a member of the Tan Tui gang, a merchant gang at the port. They usually transported goods. This time, they were involved with evil objects, which was bad news for the temple fair. The old county magistrate looked at Tan, implying that he knew Tan had a way to fix it. He had heard everything from that gossipy bird Feng. Tan put on his best poker face. He was impressed that these two people thought so highly of his abilities. He couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed, but he quickly regained his composure and put on a serious expression. He clasped his hands and said to the county magistrate that he also had something he wanted to confess. No, report. The county magistrate stood up and slammed the table in anger after hearing Tan's report. Gunpowder. The members of the Tan Tui gang had really been possessed by evil spirits. They had buried gunpowder in the Temple of Literature and Martial Arts. Tan was certain that he was not mistaken. He had seen it with his own eyes. Taoist priest Chen had also gone to chase after Sak Ha, who had been possessed by evil spirits. The county magistrate turned around and ordered Feng Bo-do to summon his men immediately. Tomorrow was the temple fair. They had to arrest all the members of the Tan Tui gang before dawn. He then turned to Tan and said that he wanted him to join the raid. After all, a master who could see evil spirits like him could be very helpful in the operation. Tan thought for a long time. Although he had the sword of virtue, this time the danger seemed to be a bit too great. But before he could finish his thoughts, the old county magistrate pressed him. Are you going or not? If you don't go, say so now. If the raid is successful, we'll give you half of the Tan Tui gang's assets. Oh my god, why do you always try to bribe me with money? Don't you know that I love money? His previously frowning face immediately lit up with joy. Tan immediately agreed. Money sounded too vulgar. He was participating in the raid for justice, not for money. Only a fool would believe what he said. The old county magistrate was already a notorious miser in Zhonghuyan. The sound of galloping horses. A couple who were still gossiping opened their door to see what was going on. They quickly realized that something was about to happen and disappeared. The troops that Feng Bo-do had summoned rode out with Tan and soon arrived at the Tan Tui gang's headquarters. The official asked Feng Bo-do what they should do now. Should they use fire to burn everything down? The hull of the ship was made of clay and iron, so fire would be useless. He also noticed that the ship was still lit up. Why was it so quiet? There wasn't a sound to be heard. It was strange indeed. Feng Bo-do ordered Tri Luke, who was standing behind him, to lead a team of men to board the ship from the left side. The rest of the men would follow him and Tan. Someone's shadow flitted by. Tan and Lao Feng cautiously peered over the side of the ship. They then snuck inside and searched several rooms, but they didn't find anyone. Feng Bo-do was about to search the next room, when he wondered if the rebels had somehow gotten wind of their arrival and fled. Tan didn't say anything. Feng Bo-do turned around to say something, but then he saw Tan staring intently at a painting on the wall. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. He suspected that there was something wrong with the painting. Feng Bo-do asked Tan if he had noticed anything unusual. He saw his officials coming to report that they had searched both sides of the ship and hadn't found a single member of the Tan Tui gang. After he finished speaking, he looked at the painting. There was one in this room, and there was one in every other room. Tan told Feng Bo-do to touch the painting. The moment his fingers touched the painting, he felt a chill that ran down his spine. He immediately pulled his hand back. He said that it was even colder than river water. Tan was silent again. The official then spoke up. He felt that the scholar in the painting was staring at the person lying on the bed. It was a strange and deadly stare. Tan and Lao Feng also realized the problem. As for me, after this incident, I will never dare to hang a picture over my bed. If I do, I might die of a heart attack. Looking at the painting again, Feng Bo-do ordered Tri-Luke to immediately lead his men to count how many paintings there were like this. Tri-Luke immediately went to do as he was ordered. But before he could reach the door, the scholar in the painting suddenly turned his head. The door slammed shut with a bang. Tri-Luke fell to the ground in fright. What was happening? Why did the door suddenly close? This isn't funny at all, guys. At the same time, the lantern went out and the entire Tan Tui gang was plunged into darkness. Tri-Luke was so scared that he wished he could faint on the spot. He signaled for help. Hey, someone turn on the lights. This cowardly young man is already panicking. If I were him, I would be just as scared. Tan walked over, standing tall and proud. What are you panicking about? Let me handle this. Do you want to catch fish in a basket? You're still too young. You're like an egg trying to be smarter than a duck. I'm the father of the person you're trying to catch. Without hesitation, the protagonist drew his saber and slashed at the door. Feng Bo-do and his men watched in amazement. The saber strike was blocked by the evil barrier. The saber began to change, and a red smoke surrounded it. Feng Bo-do felt like he was about to faint. This is terrifying. Tan is too terrifying. The monster in the tiger-killing saber has come out. It looked like it wanted to abandon its master, but Tan slapped it back into the saber. It seems that the evil spirits on this ship are more powerful than we thought. We've gotten ourselves into a lot of trouble. What am I supposed to do? Even the monster in the killing saber has been drawn out. The men behind Feng Bo-do, being mere mortals, couldn't see the evil spirits causing trouble. They saw Tan punching and kicking the air in front of him and couldn't help but think that as ordinary people, they could only rely on Tan to see the dirty things. They could only trust him. They asked Tan what he was punching. You look more and more terrifying. The room was changing around them. Something was falling down. What was it? It looked like ashes. It was leaking from a crack in the ceiling. Feng Bo-do looked up and saw it falling onto the tea table. The table exploded. Tan shouted and ran to shield Lao Feng and Tri-Luke. He used his spiritual power to protect them from the explosion. The room was now on fire. They were surrounded by flames. The official was losing his mind. He was terrified. This room was definitely haunted. Feng Bo-do realized that the room had turned into a paper room. What could they do? What could they do? Tan said nothing. He held the tiger-killing saber in front of him. This feeling, was it caused by paper people? He looked at the painting again. The provocative eyes were looking in their direction. Tan swung his saber and charged forward. I know it's your sect playing tricks. You're just showing off. The scholar's eyes turned green. Tan swung his saber and slashed the painting in two. He cursed, "Get out of here." The painting was cut in half and burst into flames. The head of the paperman fell out and hit the ground, dying. That's all? You're really weak. He had casually cut off its head. Lao Feng was still staring blankly. The roof was in ruins after the fire. Lao Feng looked up and saw that the ceiling was cracked. Tan shouted, "This is too dangerous. I'm carrying the whole team on my back. Get out. The boat is going to collapse. Hurry up or you'll die." He put his hands in front of him and ran out, leading the way for the others. They all escaped, narrowly avoiding being roasted alive. Two soldiers held each other's hands, saying that it was a ghost ship. Isn't it a ghost ship? Is it a human ship? They're talking nonsense. It seems that only the room where Tan and the others were staying caught fire. The others are nowhere to be seen. Playing hide and seek at this moment is ridiculous. Tan said with a serious face, "It's a ghost wall. It's likely that the ghost has tricked them all." Tri-Luke scratched his ear in confusion. He asked, "What exactly should we do now? Oh my ancestors, save me." There was a noise all around them, both in the water and in the other rooms. It was really windy, but it still hadn't really ended. This was underestimating the opponent. The eyes in the paintings in the chaotic rooms were strange. Paper people came out of the paintings. They were laughing and giggling. Their laughter echoed all around them, from the rooms. They squeezed through the cracks in the doors. They were really wild. They had to bring their whole gang with them wherever they went. They must have epilepsy. Their laughter is giving me a headache. If I hear this laughter while I'm angry, I'll probably have a heart attack. The paper people finished laughing and then rushed towards Tannen and the others. The two officials asked each other what those things were. It seems like there are some in the water too. Tannen thought to himself, these things can get into any place. Fortunately, he had cultivated the Black Mountain technique. His owl eyes were of super high quality and could see through the darkness of the night. He saw that the boat was very strange. Green spots surrounded the entire Ton Tui gang boat. Oh, there are so many of them. Feng Bo Do and his soldiers were hiding far away. They couldn't help at all and could only ask, how can we defeat them now? Tannen knew that he couldn't hurt these things. They didn't have a clear form, so how could he hurt them? He pretended to ignore them and said, watch me, you little devils. Tannen swung his saber. The green things rushed forward. Oh, you came at the right time, my little darlings. You're just what I need to test out the results of my hard cultivation. The paper people were torn apart. Tannen stamped his foot on the ground, his presence overwhelming. He switched his divine technique to the heavenly demon sealing technique. A bright line of fire appeared and extended for a while. There were still too many of the paper figures. They flew towards the protagonist like moths to a flame. Ox demon soldier technique. Tannen kicked a paper figure and sent it flying into the wall. That's more like it. He then shouted, Black Mountain internal energy. He swung his saber in a cold, sharp arc, completely destroying the paper figures that were approaching. Human strength is limited. Tannen was also a little tired, but the paper figures were still laughing. It was as if they were laughing right in the protagonist's face. Tannen thought to himself, the killing intent of this saber is too strong. I'm about to lose control of myself in this crowd. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and shouted, come on, clowns. I'll send you all to the Western Paradise. He shouted and used his red blood technique. The saber danced wildly. The light from the blade pierced through the space in front of him, forcing Feng Bo Do and the others to cover their eyes. In an instant, the entire boat became bright. It was surrounded by a dazzling red light. The saber came down, and the paperman's head burned. In the smoky space, Tannen had successfully eliminated all the paper people. He was rewarded with 500 merit points. At this moment, Feng Bo Do and the officials finally showed their faces. It's over. Tannen is fine. Thank goodness. The ancestors are protecting us. Tannen turned around and smiled. A little thing like this is nothing to me. The formation was broken. Tri Luke and the others also appeared. Several men holding paintings ran over to report. It was obvious that the paintings were new and in good condition before, but now they were torn and tattered. Tannen immediately used his spirit sight technique. He discovered that there was no more yin energy. Perhaps the yin energy in the paintings had dissipated. These paintings all relied on yin energy to survive. It was understandable that they were torn now. Feng Bo Do clasped his hands and thanked Tannen. He said that the evil spirits were dead. Was there any way to find the missing people? Tannen was somewhat helpless. He was 3 parts helpless and 7 parts capable. He could fight evil spirits, but when it came to ghosts and spirits, he had to call on Old Chen. Could he just say that he couldn't find the people? That would be too embarrassing. Real man would never say that he couldn't do something. While he was still struggling with his thoughts, he heard the familiar voice of Old Chen. Old Chen was crawling up from the side of the boat. He kept saying, my dear little brother, I'm here for you. The two of them looked at each other with longing in their eyes. They immediately ran towards each other. Their arms were wide open as if they were going to embrace each other warmly. But the gestures seemed a little strange. Just as they were about to hug each other, Feng Bo Do appeared, causing the protagonist to miss his hand. Old Chen dislocated his knee. He still maintained the demeanor of the 13th zodiac sign. He directly divided the feelings of the bloody brothers. Again, between them, it was not like the plot of a comic book. Tannen had returned to normal. He asked Old Chen if there was any way to find the people who had fallen into the ghost trap. For Old Chen, it was easy. The ghost trap was basically a thick miasma. All he had to do was use his true energy to dispel it. The miasma would dissipate on its own, and then the people would be found. Old Duan took the talisman in his hand. He shouted, and the talisman glowed and flew down into the water. After a while, it took effect. Formation was completely dispelled, and the soldiers floated to the surface of the water. Waking up from their long dream, the soldiers were stunned and didn't understand what had happened. Feng Bo Do was equally surprised. He shouted with joy and thanked Old Chen profusely. He kept praising Old Chen's great divine powers and boundless magic power, saying that there was nothing he couldn't do. Oh, my God. Old Chen was bragging again. Tannen could only pretend to be deaf and dumb so that Old Chen could fly to the 9th heaven. The group boarded the small boats to leave. Looking at the direction of the Ton Tui gang, Tannen couldn't help but wonder, where did the people of the Ton Tui gang go? Feng Bo-do immediately came up with a theory. It's highly possible that they were also taken by ghosts and demons like our people. Could they have also been controlled by a spell? Are they trapped somewhere and can't get out? The boat still looked a little creepy. Tan kept staring at it. Then he suddenly stood up. What is he going to do again? He ignored the bewildered and suspicious looks and jumped directly into the cold water. Feng Bo-do didn't know what the hell he was doing. He didn't come up for a long time. Could it be that he decided to commit suicide because he thought he had lived too long and wanted to give his blessings to the next generation? But Tan doesn't have a wife or children. He's a virgin. Old Chen muttered the words creating karma, which made Feng Bo-do even more worried. Why can't I see him? He shouted, answer me, you bastard. Tan. In the cold water of the Han River, Tan's two beautiful hands swam in the water. He surfaced and dived, but he was nowhere to be seen. He dived a little deeper and saw a dead body at the bottom of the river. The body was covered in evil spirits. They seemed to have been turned into funeral objects. Tan approached them. It seemed that these corpses belonged to the Tan Tui gang, but there were a few people who didn't seem quite right. A green smoke was coming from their corpses. What was that? Could they be ghosts? One of them pointed down. What was it pointing at? Tan followed its gaze. It turned out that each corpse was tied up with a rope. He immediately dived down to see what was holding the corpses back. After a while, Tan surfaced at the side of the boat, panting heavily. Feng Bo-do was even happier to see him than he would have been to see gold. He asked him what was under the water. He learned that there were corpses everywhere under the water. The corpses were indeed those of the Tan Tui gang, but there were a few corpses with some strange things on them. They were covered in talismans. Then he told Feng Bo-do that he could send some people to check the stones that were being used to hold down the corpses. The ropes were tied to the legs of the corpses. Old Feng immediately turned to Tri-Luke and ordered him to quickly find some good swimmers and divers to go down and retrieve the bodies. He also reminded the men to pay attention to the type of stone that Tan had mentioned when they were retrieving the bodies. Old Chen sighed. He hadn't expected that all the people in the Tan Tui gang would be used as funeral objects. He rang the bell. He ordered the men to quickly find some good swimmers and divers to go down and retrieve the bodies. He also reminded the men to pay attention to the type of stone that Tan had mentioned when they were retrieving the bodies. Old Chen sighed. He hadn't expected that all the people in the Tan Tui gang would be used as funeral objects. He rang the bell. He rang the bell and said, all the people in the Tan Tui gang have been turned into funeral objects. He made a gesture to pray for the dead. Savior of the suffering, in all 10 directions, use your divine power to save all living beings from the maze of ignorance. Immediately afterwards, Tan received 1858 merit points. He had successfully completed the task. The corpses under the water had also been retrieved. There were a total of 5 of them, lying on stretchers and covered with sheets. Tri-Luke came to report that he had completed the task assigned to him. He had 2 scrolls in his hands. These were printed from the stones under the feet of the corpses. He opened them and saw that they were maps of the county. There were also marks on the maps, which were probably the locations of the explosives. Feng Bo-do was in a hurry. He immediately ordered people to search the area. He also said that he was very grateful to Tan and Old Chen tonight. He then took his leave, saying that he would go ahead first. Tan didn't expect that the people of the Tan Tui gang would still have clues to the location of the explosives. The sky was gradually getting brighter. Old Chen and Tan looked into the distance. The Qingming festival was about to begin. The seal on the Tan Tui gang's boathouse had been broken. Water was a mysterious force that could bind the souls of people. They would never be able to reincarnate. The sun had risen high in the sky. The officials carried the corpses away. Tri-Luke came forward to report that Feng Bo-do had specially instructed him before he left to arrange for the bodies of the heroes of the Tan Tui gang to be properly buried. He said that they had fought bravely against the Japanese invaders and deserved to be treated with respect. Tan nodded and said that he would arrange for it. He also wanted to repay them for their kindness in helping the people of Zhonghuyan. He then said that he would leave the rest to the authorities. He told them to go and rest. Tan was still worried. The murderer who had massacred the Tan Tui gang was really cruel. He wanted the authorities to investigate thoroughly and not let them get away with it. He nodded and thanked them. Tri-Luke continued, saying that the Qingming festival in Zhonghuyan had begun. He invited Tan and Old Chen to the Temple of Literature and Martial Arts to see the Tan Tien Willow. The Tan Tien Willow was a 1,000-year-old sacred tree that the waiter at the tea house had mentioned. Could he really see it today? Tannen asked a lot of questions, then suddenly slapped the old man next to him on the head. He was still sleeping like a log. He said goodbye to Tri-Luke and went home to get ready to go to the Temple of Literature and Martial Arts to see the legendary Tan Tien Willow. The familiar manor. The goose was leisurely grazing. It was living the life of Riley. All it did was eat, poop, and then eat again. The door opened and two figures entered. Old Chen's eyes were as dark as a panda's. It was really hard for an old man to stay up late. Tannen was also exhausted. He still urged old Chen to wash up. He said that he would wait for him and then they would go to the temple fair to see the Tan Tien Willow. But before he could finish speaking, he collapsed. He was worried about old Chen. The precious goat didn't know the difference between hair and grass anymore. It kept nibbling away like that. It seemed that there wouldn't be a single hair left on Tannen's head soon. As evening fell, Tannen slept soundly because he was so tired. He heard old Chen muttering excitedly, selling talismans for money. 1 talisman, 10,000 taels of gold. Isn't this making a lot of money for little work? Hee hee. Old Chen was really too greedy. Tannen had to wake up because he was suffocating. Besides, why would he need to draw talismans when he was following a rich guy like him? He didn't lack money. He was truly the epitome of a male protagonist. Not only was he handsome, he was also stinking rich. I sincerely hope that I can get rich and buy a dozen air conditioners. I'm so poor. As he lay there thinking, he realized that his merit points were about to break through 2,000. Could he use the talisman paper from that old quack Chen to successfully complete the task? After thinking about it, he reached out to find the talisman paper again. He didn't know where the old man had hidden it, but the talisman paper was crumpled up and looked terrible. Whatever. He would complete the task first and then think about it later. Tannen immediately activated his power and began the task. After a while, he succeeded. The light of the great Tao lasted for a long time. This talisman paper was quite powerful. He immediately crumpled up the talisman paper. Something miraculous happened. The talisman paper actually worked. It transmitted spiritual energy throughout his body. Tannen immediately felt that all the fatigue from fighting all night seemed to be gone. This talisman could also nourish the human spirit. Oh, by the way, how much merit did it take to get that golden light? Probably not much. Tannen used the art of observing qi. If he didn't see it, his heart wouldn't ache. Damn it, it used up 818 of his merit points. That was almost 1,000 merit points. He had fought all night and was so tired that he was about to fart. He had only gotten that much. Tannen couldn't help but thrash around on the bed.